Marshall in the middle.
Good night, everybody. Hey, we're live. I'm here with Sergeant retired Ken Kraus, a hero, an absolute hero, and a friend of mine. And we're doing the Heroes I Know show. And I got his book here. I've been reading it. We're going to put some links up. And as a matter of fact, let's do that right now. This is the Amazon for Ken Kraus's book. And you can go check it out right there. I'll tell you, Ken, first off, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on here with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
So back in 1979, before the hostage crisis and the big rescue and the 444 days that a lot of people know about, there's something else that happened, and you were a part of that. And you were shot, and you were beaten, and you were imprisoned, and you were of losing your life. And the story is absolutely amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Tell me, I mean, where do you even start? You wrote the whole book. By the way, if you have not, if you haven't heard of this, the book's like $20. Okay. You can get the book for less than going to Arby's. Okay. And getting something for you and your wife. Okay. So I'm telling you, this book is a great book. I'm going to keep talking. I'm not letting you talk. Okay. I'm going to tell you the one thing about this book that absolutely I love is miracles. Believe in them. And that's on page 222. And for me, repeating numbers happen to mean something. I'm a spiritual person. And Ken, throughout the book, it was shown that you are spiritual and that you listen to something that's deep inside. And I see your flags and medals and things behind you. You're a Purple Heart recipient. I don't know. One thing, how's your toe? How's your toe doing, man? That's the one I think I want to know about.
Yeah, Del, thanks for bringing that up and all the accolades. It really humbles me. Specifically, what you're talking about now is the Valentine's Day attack on the American embassy in Tehran, Iran, 1979, which we're coming up on the 47th year anniversary, if you want to call it anniversary of that. So it's befitting that I have actually a podcast with someone that reaches out to at this time of probably, I'd say, prayer and retrospect and depression at times during this week in February. But thank you very much, Will. I appreciate it. The toe's doing good. It's still there. Getting old, just like me. But that was one of the worst, should we say, injuries that I suffered besides the shotgun blast and the rest of them. It's the one that seems to probably give me the most trouble because, yeah, wherever you go, wherever you sit, you move, no matter what, take a shower, whatever you got to do, you got to move your feet. And there's a lot of bones down there that when they get broken, hurt, they don't heal well.
Oh, wow. You told the guy to get you an extra large shoe. It'd be fine.
Yeah, the toe was hanging out to the side like a weather vane. So a normal contemporary shoe wouldn't have worked.
I want to spend a lot of time on the podcast with you, but I don't necessarily want you to retell the whole story from the book because I'm going to tell you, it's worth a read. It is worth the read. And I appreciate the way you did the book. The book, it goes back and forth a little bit and it really keeps you interested. And it's a really, really good read. Tell me, set the stage for when you realize that all of a sudden you're in danger. You're not from there. You're newly assigned. You're in the Iranian embassy. You've had a very short time to make friends. Tell me about that morning.
Well, it was February 14th, early morning, and it's very, very cold at the in the mountains up there in Iran. We had just stood a 24-hour standoff watch, which means you stay alert, you don't sleep, you don't get any breaks. We were anticipating an assault, another terrorist assault that had been going down. Now, to remember, put this into perspective, this is barely 4 years after Saigon has fallen. So we're still basically just getting out of a Vietnam era mentality and atmosphere. You haven't had anything happen up until today where people are proud of the American military and, proud of your service and thank you for your service. We haven't had Grenada. We haven't had Panama yet. We hadn't gone over there and taking care of business in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. None of that's happened yet. I mean, I was a Vietnam era veteran. I went in October 74. They were winding Vietnam down, but the Saigon embassy complete capitulation didn't happen until April of 75. And I was already in boot camp and done. So to give you that perspective, there was when this happened, there was no internet. The concept of the cell phones in your hand probably didn't even exist yet. So when you look back, considering what we're going to say here, take it into the view that everything that happened would have to be sent back. In those days of communication, 2 and 3 days before. Nowadays, you can just watch it live, press live, and boom, you got it, whether it's AI or not. But back then, anything that happens usually has to go through, AP, a wire, or UPI, Reuters or Reuters, whatever, and you got it second and third hand, and probably a day late. So that being said, we had had to bolster up the American embassy there in Tehran because of the basically the civil war that's going on. It was just as bad or as worse as what's going on right now today. And even though you have the blackouts and you have the modern day technology, you can still see the suffering and the problems that are going on in a bloody civil war. That's brother between brother. It's look back from your history here in the Civil War here, what it was like, the North and the South, the gray and the blue. Everybody picks a side and everybody's got a version of what they want as freedom. And they just go at it. Now, a little history on Iran is that it's ancient Persia is what you're looking at. If you'd like to go back and delve into your Bible, and you're looking at Cyrus and Xerxes, and that's where you're looking at back here. Okay, so the ancient Persians have been around for a long time, and they're very proud of their heritage. It's a huge country. If you imagine how big Texas is, Iran, I think, is about 2.5 times bigger than Texas. And so the area that it covers, being Russia and the Middle East and Asia, it's kind of like a giant bridge that's there. And the Shah of Iran at the time was having trouble holding on to a civil war. It was between the Shah of Iran, Shah Reza Pahlavi, and the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was trying to come in with the theocracy, a God-driven type of religion. And that's where the two Shiite and Sunni Muslim religions, kind of had a spark, and it was ugly. And what we needed to do is bolster the Americans to get out of there. Eventually, the State Department had directed the Americans that if you weren't absolutely necessary to get your ass out of there and get home, get somewhere safe. And that put a lot of stress on the American embassy and the consulates and things that were there. So, they needed additional security. So they called for some of the Marines that were stationed at what we call fat embassies. That's the kind of embassies that didn't have basically a generic threat at the most part. Rome, Madrid, Spain. I came from Nicosia, Cyprus. So there was a few extra of us that bolstered the Marine detachment there. And again, like I said, it wouldn't happen overnight where you'd get it, when you were arriving in Iran and you'd be texting somebody back home. I mean, that didn't happen. You didn't have that option. So you get over there and people didn't even know what was going on. At the time, until the hostage crisis hit, most people couldn't find Iran or Iraq on the map. That's a fact. People, you ask them where it was, and they have no clue. Most would point out Saudi Arabia or something. But once the news start hammering them every day, then people start to look up and and see it. But that morning was February the 14th, and I was just getting off of duty, being relieved by 2 other Marines at the back gate, which is a very sensitive area because we restricted the egress and ingress and egress of everyone at that part of the embassy. Only certain specific people could actually go in and out of that gate to a restaurant or the PX commissary area. the what they call foreign service national employees, the locals, they were not allowed to come in through that gate. They had to go through the front gate, and it's a different type of ingress. So just the American citizens themselves that would come in there, and it was a very vital area besides just the main gate up at the Chancery Building. So we had been having drive-by shootings, more like harassment type of techniques from different type of gangs, pro-Shah, anti-Shah, pro-Khomeini, anti-Khomeini. There's different tribes and different factions all over. You needed a damn scorecard to, keep track of what was going on. You never know. Nobody has insignias and uniforms over there. Everybody's just got bandoliers of ammo, and they just shoot up to hell what they want to shoot up. You know what I mean? And when it comes down to driving down and protesting, why not? Let's go down Embassy Row and hit the Brits and hit the Canadians, hit the Americans. Well, they'll throw Molotov cocktails over top, spray the embassy walls or something. So you had to be alert all the time. You can never let your guard down over there because you have several different types of missions depending on what position you were at the embassy at the time. So, with that being said, the next thing we know is that it's let's see, I remember specifically, like I said in the book, I just gotten off and I was hungry. I went into the Caravanserai restaurant and had breakfast. I saw my buddy, the waiter, his name was Minachi, God bless him, and he was teaching me Farsi for the little bit that I wanted to know, but I was only supposed to be there about 90 days, temporary additional duty. You know how that works, right? And so it was great to get along with him. And he had two daughters that wanted to come to America and go to college. And I said, well, look, when I get out of here, I'm from Pennsylvania area. I said, if and when they ever get to the United States, if they ever need a friend or someone to talk to, let me know. My family and I'd be willing to help out as best I can because you guys took care of me as a guest, as a host over here. So we kind of had a gentleman's agreement about that. It was really kind of nice. Made me feel good that you can be something besides just walking around with a weapon, waiting for a response in some type of military manner. That you can also act like a human being and help people out that are in a bind with their own country. Well, I finished my breakfast and I went back to the Marine House, and I was just getting ready to get some sleep because that 24-hour awake, I mean, it just wears you out. And I was just taking my gear off, my flak jacket, and put my radio away, and all of a sudden I started to hear um, small arms fire. But it was very, very loud, and we hear it all the time. But it's if you've been around weapons enough, firearms enough, you'll know how close something is, and the difference between a handgun or a rifle, and because the crack of that rifle, it's a lot louder, a lot sharper. But it was a lot closer than what we were used to as normal, and just as three or four of those handgun rounds went off, then the rifle fire. We started to hear rifle fire. And the weird thing about that is that the State Department knew that we were going to be attacked, or they had intel or an inkling about it. Okay, and they had taken our M16s away, actually 36 hours before this assault. I had taken the M16s away, the automatic weapons, and given us Remington 870P folding stock shotguns to perform our duties. And I raised hell about that. It's in the book, and it wasn't my call. Neither was it for the NCOIC, done by Sergeant Sutton. We work for the State Department. That's just the way it is, and they call the shots. Don't know why. They don't never explain. It's just you don't get to ask why. You just get to do or die. You've been there. So it made it very difficult for us to try to respond in fire maneuver or anything. We heard the radios crackle. They're coming over the wall. They're coming over the wall. And then the rifle fire went from single rifle fire to sustained automatic weapons fire. And we know it wasn't us. It wasn't. None of the Marines had automatic weapons. We all had shotguns. And as the radio crackled about, they were coming over the front gate, the main gate, the motor pool gate. We were just being swamped. Besides that, they had the high-rise apartment complexes. If you can get a map in the book, or if you get a map on, I guess they probably got a few of them on the internet, you'll see that The high-rise apartment complexes and office buildings around the embassy look down and shoot into the embassy. So you're looking at somebody that's got a range of fire on a 30 caliber. Oh hell, they can shoot you if they can see you. Put it that way, 1,000 yards. We, on the other hand, we couldn't hit anybody even with a slug that was 50 yards away. So besides the manpower, the position, the elevated position that they had on us, we recovered with almost no place, no chance to go. They were just raking the embassy compound back and forth. Uh, and our protocols necessary to get to our response would be get to the Chancery building, get hold of the ambassador and the Charge d'Affaires, and then we have a protocol that goes after that. In this case, I could not get from the Marine House to open field. It would have been suicide, as you read in the book. You could just see that the branches were snipping down from the rifle fire. The cars were rocking. You could see them rocking, and the windshields getting hit and splattered. And there's absolutely no cover running across something as open as it's like a little park, but it was more like a soccer field. I mean, it was suicide. So I decided to make a dash for it, go back to my last post, which is accordingly, within the protocols, plan A, plan B. Well, we're down to plan C right now. And I went back and got hold of the other two Marines that were there, a sergeant and a corporal. They were hunkered down, and they were listening to the radio, just exactly what was trying to go on, assess the situation. And we started to hear the Farsi coming over the radio. So we know that our communication had been compromised, especially with the front gate. We knew the front gate was already taken, and now they had access to the entire, embassy. Any Marines that were still out there would have worked their way back to the Chancery building, and you turn that into an Alamo. You lock it up, lock it down, and then wait it out or shoot it out, whatever it's going to be. We didn't have that option. I said it was Sergeant Hinojos, Jack Hinojos, and Stanley Lochek. Our options here were, I said, look, we have this like horseshoe area to protect, and the gate running from that area where the civilians were back into the embassy again. I said, we have to hold that gate, lock it down. I said, the best point of contact would be a defense position would be right over here in the Caravans restaurant where I just left. And there was very few windows, and it's very ballistically more applicable to a defensive posture. Across from us would have been what they call like the PX. It's like a little store, commissary kind of store, and there was about a dozen or so people inside there at the time. Most of them are either workers, Filipinos, Pakistanis, people that work are employed basically by the embassy, and we had to get them out of there too. So I told Jack and Stanley, I said, look, one of you get in there and get everybody in the restaurant, which was just the Americans. I said, get them hunkered down, get them in the back. And I said, you, Jack, you go over, you get everybody out of that PX, close it up. So once we got everybody together, we got a head count, 22 of us. I'd say with the 3 Marines and then 15 Americans, the rest were Foreign Service local employees, and we just waited it out. And that's where, when you pick it up in a book, the assault come, and it wasn't just one giant assault. It was 2.5, 3 hours of small little firefights all over the compound, because we're about 27 to 30 acres for the size of that embassy right there, that diplomatic mission. So we're listening, and as we said in the book there, we really didn't have a good situation report. We didn't know what was going on. You could just tell by where the fire was coming from, who was firing at who. You could tell the shotguns were responding in kind to the automatic weapon fire. So it was we were hunkered down, barricaded ourselves in the restaurant, and all of a sudden the back gate literally blew open with a vehicle, semi-armored vehicle. So it looked like a half military Jeep of some type that I could see through the crack in the window. And it blew right through the gate that reached from the outside where we were all the way to the main street. So you got 2 gates. The one from the outside on a place called Kuchi Bijan gate, that is literally the street out in Iran. And normally that's have soldiers and or Farsi police protecting or patrolling out there, which, by the way, they weren't there that morning. And we come to say, you know what, where are these guys? So nice of them to tell us that they're not going to show up. What did they happen to know ahead of time, right? And and then you have the inner perimeter gate, which actually leads over the wall into the embassy compound proper. So we were in between the two in a field of fire there, and pretty much in a good position until we realized that once that gate blew open, there was probably about 30 or 40 armed and terrorists, militants, call them what you want. They weren't students. There's an the book that you have, Will. You'll see that there's not a lot of pictures in there. There's just a couple of them. But if someone would purchase the special edition, it has a lot more photographs that have never been seen before. Some of them are very heinous and horrible, from the pictures that they showed of these people that they tortured and murdered in the street, and they put it in the newspapers. And I have those original ones, in my house. They were smuggled out of Iran, and we've used those that have never been seen before in the special edition book with the blue line on it, if you want to purchase that. Plus, it's also with the special edition, there's a lot more information that has come out since then in the last 40 years, debriefed, classified information, stuff that now people are dead and gone, so it doesn't matter, what is said about them. And trying to hunt that down and put it in the special edition, was quite a chore, quite a challenge. But I'm glad I did it. But anyway, so that's where we hunkered down, and we realized that this caravanserai restaurant we're in is solid wood, all wood. And we figured, well, if these guys decide to torch this place, we got nowhere to go. We'll cook inside like shrimp. And it was very unsettling feeling at the first moment. But right away when they came in, they fanned out, and they all just went over to the PX commissary, raided that place, and just basically torched the place up. It was stupid because half of the stuff that they wanted to steal, they were destroying and throwing out in the street. I said, it's food. It's there's things in there that take home to yourself. Why destroy it? It's crazy. But realizing that it wouldn't be long before they come check in the restaurant to see, who was in there, what else do they got. And that's where in your book you start to look at the problems with the other Marines and say, well, we're in the Alamo mode. They don't know we're in here, but what happens when they find out if we are? So I hope that sets their picture for what you're looking
Oh,
at.
wow. Yeah. So you're holed up. You've got responsibility for a lot of people. The government, your own government, has taken your weapons away.
Fact.
And the difference between a rifle and a shotgun in a firefight, it's night and day. It is that shotgun does not have the reloadability, the range, anything that it takes for anything other than close quarter. Here
Exactly.
you are, trying to protect something, and you didn't get orders otherwise, and now here you are being assaulted. So one of the things that's interesting, were you wearing just an old flak vest, the old Vietnam flak vest? Was that what you were wearing?
Yep. The old, yeah. We literally call it a flak vest because it still had the ceramic plates on them.
So it did have ceramic plates on it?
On the chest area, yeah. On the small on the side, it did not. No, that was just plain Kevlar.
Okay. So you had a fairly substantial set of body armor then.
From a front or complete rear shot, yes. But then again, that's in retrospect, I say relationship relatively to what the round was that was going to hit you. Shrapnel that is not aerodynamic per se, coming from a bomb, a IED, something like that, is not as much as a 30 caliber 308. That hits you head on. It's probably going to punch right through that vest. Okay, and again, your face is wide open, but for flak, for the most amount of point, it is a flak vest. Anything that's just short of a direct hit, it will slow down or deflect. But a straight shot, which they were using the Belgian FN G3, they were called rifles, and it's a NATO round. It's a 308, 7.62 millimeter. So at that range, less than 100 yards, that thing's still supersonic. It hasn't even hit its apex yet, so it's on its way up in speed. Hits you anywhere, it's going to tear it. You can hunt almost anything on the North American continent with that. That tell you what kind of a powerful round it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So you got shot with one of your own shotgun. And what kind, did it have a slug in it?
No, thank God. If it did, we wouldn't be having this conversation here.
Right, right. So what was and it was, you had mangled it up,
Well,
that,
so what happened is that lead up to this for the people that are listening. When we put the non-combatants back in the freezer room, which is probably the best, most ballistic safe place we could, and we manned the doors and any choke points where people could get through, any points where they could make entry. Um, it's just a matter of time before they started shaking the doors and wanting to try to get inside. I guess they heard or they realized that there were people inside because they started screaming in Farsi, and of course they just didn't know how many of us there were. So they, I asked Minachi. I said, who are these people? What are they saying? What do they want?" And excuse me. Yeah, like in the book, he said, "Hey, Sergeant Ken," this is what he liked to call me, "Sergeant Ken, these are very bad people. These are Mujahideen Khalq," which, if you can wrap your head around this one, communist, Fedayeen, Muslims. How that
okay.
works, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. They had the guns, they had the AKs, they had all kinds of weapons out there. And when they realized that there were people in there, they started banging on the doors. They wanted to get in. And thinking back this far, I don't know how, but and I don't know if I elaborated in the book or not, how they ascertained that there could have been military or could have been Marines in there, meaning us. So, given that, they were given, they were demanding that they open the door, and if there's any military in there, to surrender, throw your arms out. Well, we have no orders to do that. Our standing orders were left at that post, and that's what we were going to be. Not that we were given options of being surrounded by a bunch of civilians. I mean, that's a very untenable position you ever want to be in. Excuse me. Anyway, so as they start to try to get in through the windows and the door locks, um, basically one of them shot the hell out of the door lock itself, and it's just a twist little lock, so it's no big deal. And shot that out and knocked it out with the butt of his rifle. And when he stuck his hand through, well, we shot it like we said in the book. We shot his hand up. Well, he pulled back a bloody, stumpy nub, and the fight was on. After that, they just riddled that place with bullets. I mean, there would have been 30 or 40 of them all on full auto, and it was something like you've never seen even in the movies. It was insane. The din, the loud noise so much from that close range, and all we could do was just hunker down and get up against the wall and inside, and let hopefully no ricochet hit you. And then, of course, didn't realize that what we had, and we returned fire. So back and forth, on and on. And the foolish ones that didn't realize what was coming, they were standing out there in the area with no cover concealment, just standing there trying to reload when we hit them from 3 different points of fire, and we cut them down in half. I mean, they were dead and dying everywhere. So we had this went on back and forth for about almost 2 hours. But now they keep getting more reinforcements, and they got more weapons. And of course, we're outmanned, outgunned, outnumbered. They have the rate of fire, the range of fire. We have nothing, with nothing in advantage, for our side. And plus, we're only rounded about 200 rounds. So after about 2 hours, we're down next to nothing. And in the book, you hear me talking with Jack and Henry, and I said, we divvy up the ammunition between the 3 of us. And when I said, what do we got? 8, 10 shots each. I said, we're only going to have one more go at this thing. And then I said, it's going to be down to hand. And I had my K-bar on me. I had it strapped to the jacket that I was wearing. And I looked over, and you read that part in the book where I look at Jack, and he's from, I think, Brownsville, Texas. He's Hispanic background down in Texas anywhere. I said, "Hey, you got a fighting knife?" And he looks over at me. He says, "I'm Mexican, man. What do you think?" So a little bit of humor in a situation, that's in a dire position. And I look over at, and we both look over at Henry. He's from Boston. Now you got a guy that's got a Hispanic accent, and talking with me, and I'm from New Jersey. Then you got Henry, who's up from Boston, Pox's Khan the Yard up there. It's like the Three Stooges trying to talk to each other, and it's funny as hell if you can get the gist of it, in the book. Anyway, so I look over and he said, "No, I ain't got no knife." And he said, "But I think they got some in the butcher knives in the kitchen." I said, "Good point. Why don't you go check that shit out?" So he did. And a few minutes later, he came back with a 9-inch butcher knife. I said, "Damn, that's good. Now, where are you going to put it?" "Our knives are in our sheath." I said, "Where are you going to put it?" And he stuck it right inside his belt, his ammo belt. And I said, "Oh man, God, this just gets better by the minute." But you get the little sense of the fear and uh, I guess, the anxiety that builds up and the tension will bring out things like that in people that have been through that kind of uh, that training, or what to know what's coming. It's the way some people just handle pain, and some people handle fear. So I said, "Look, I said, you guys realize they come through that door, it's going to get hand to hand. They're going to overwhelm us, and that's not going to be good because no one's going to be able to protect those civilians in the back, and they're going to have their way with them women, and it's just an ugly situation. Plus we had you've seen my book where I talk about, we reference them, they're called secret squirrels. They're intelligence agents, okay? One of the alphabet intelligence agencies: FBI, CIA, NSA, NRO. You pick it, we got them there. Okay, anybody that doesn't think don't have intelligence people in an embassy everywhere in the world, don't fool yourself. All right, that's where they work out of. Hello. Anyway, so we had two of them that were having breakfast that day, and when I saw them that morning before I went back over to my room in a Marine house, they were having breakfast there. And then I had even to tell Jack, they say, we got two secret squirrels in there, because we always got to keep a track of these people. We're always watching their back. Uh, so really, when we realized now they were in our custody and our control, we own them. We have to make sure we keep them protected. And they work under different identifications for different reasons. And should these Mujahideen, Fedayeen, whatever kind of een you want to call them, get hold of them and realize who they are, I mean, that could really go bad. I mean, for a lot of people in a lot of places. So it's paramount that we make sure that, what we could do. But what could we do? We had nowhere to go, no communication. Hardline didn't work. Radios were compromised. We were on our own. We didn't realize even what was going on with the battle that was there, the gun battle. So that being said, I told him, I said, "Look," I said, I was feeling very queasy, very, very sick in my stomach, very, very uneasy. And I said, I went to the bathroom, and I said, the men's room, and I said, I got to work on this here. I said, I don't know how to tell you this, how it goes, Will, but it's, I had a come to Jesus meeting, literally, is that I'm saying, completely helpless here. I said, it's just a matter before they get their shit together on the other side of that wall, and they make a final assault. And it really weird, because it didn't bother me so much that I know I was going to fight and have to, go hand in hand with them. I said, I really worried about the other people, and that they were in, our charge, and I'm the senior NCO there. So it's all me. I mean, this command here is, all mine. And, the solemnness of it, it really hit you. And that quiet, that dead quiet, that was just the opposite a few minutes ago of all the hell that was breaking loose, and everything was shot up like crazy. Now you're just hearing distant gunfire from the rest of the embassy as different positions are falling, or when the ambassador had given the orders to surrender in general, which we'd never received. And in that bathroom, I knelt down and I made a deal with God, and I told him, I said, "Look, there's no way out of this thing." I said, "You're the only one that could be a hope." I said, "You got to find some way to help us." I said, "It's not me, Lord. It really isn't." I said, "My day is done in a matter of minutes here." I said, "But we got to find some way that these Americans and these other non-combatants don't get hurt. What can we do to what miracle can you perform?" And it's funny because I use that word miracle, and you read it in the book, and people that read the book, especially at book signings, I ask them, I said, when they get my name and card, I ask them, you go through here and you look and you see how many times a miracle happened here. And I can name 6, maybe 7. And I said, you can call it coincidence if you want, but I said, you have to line so much of these things up just perfectly at that specific cosmic moment, or it changes. The physics and the dynamics change. So, and it's funny because there's been a couple people that have contacted me since then after they bought the book, and they said, "How about this part of the book? How about that? Especially the portion where we get into the prison and Evin Prison." And they're looking. I said, "How about this?" And I said, "You know what? I never looked at it like that." So a lot of times there's even more of a background to represent miracles than even now. Um, all these years, and I said, it's come back to me as that moment in the bathroom. Is it throw some cold water in my face, and I said, "Look, I'll make a deal, Lord." I said, "You can have me, my Marines, whatever we're going to do. We signed up for that." I said, "This is the way it goes." Nobody promised us a rose garden. We knew that sooner or later, anywhere in the Marine Corps, you're always a rifleman, no matter what your MOS job is. And we expected this in the embassy. So no big deal. I've been in other embassies before. We've had other, insurgent terrorist attacks. Nothing this big, nothing this serious. Anyway, so it's as much as I was upset, pissed off that we got put in this position, and frightened and terrified, there seemed to be a calm that come over me that I just sensed. Well, and it's like a little voice. This is weird because I've said it several times on podcasts. I felt the voice. I didn't hear the voice. You feel a voice. Everybody talks to themselves. They told you what to do. You talk to yourself, but this was a different voice. I don't know what it was, who it was, where it came from. And it just said that, be alert, be peaceful, wait for the voice. Wait. I said, there's no time to wait. These guys are coming through this door any minute. Okay. So you're begging on one end for an answer, but then when a slight answer comes through, you don't want to listen to it. You don't want to hear it. So, I mean, it's, what's new with the Marine, right? Well, I went back to talk with Jack and Henry, and I said, okay, I said, guys, we're going to have to get 3 spots here where the 3 of us can cross intermingle fire here. And then we fall back, whoever's left, wounded or dead or whatever, dead, dying, wounded, we fight it all the way back to the freezer room and defend the best we can. I said, oh, we got 2 or 3 guys that are in there. I said, Henry, go in there, explain the situation to them. I said, tell them arm themselves with whatever they want. They might be fighting for their lives. And when the other people had heard me say that, you could just look on their face. It was terrifying. I mean, the women, the people just looking around, the ones that just knew a little bit of English, but they could figure, out what was going on, especially with all their shooting and firing. And they got to figure is that, wow, there's nothing they can. If we thought the Marines were helpless, these people are even more so because they wouldn't have anything, any way to defend themselves. It's crazy. So basically, we formed ourselves up in a tripod position, and here comes that peace again, that voice that comes around. I said, all right. I said, they're mingling around out there. I can see them. They're getting ready to see what's the best way to assault this. And it's going to be quite obvious. They're just going to hit us with volleys of fire, keep our head down, and these guys are going to come busting right through that door. And it's going to be, okay corral, period. Just then I could see a shadow that was walking around by the edge of the window, trying to open up a little service door. It would not have come into where we were, but he didn't know that. But as he came around to the window, I happened to notice him, and I said, he's a goofy looking guy. He looked like, if you look back in the old 70s and 80s, if Frito Bandito is what he looked like. He really did. He looked more South American. He had a suit on, but he had a bandolier of ammo, 308. 30 caliber ammo, bandolier. It's in the book, and I got the picture of the guy. But he's carrying an Uzi, a 9mm Uzi. So nothing fits right here. He's not dressed for the occasion, and he certainly doesn't have the armament that it would take. So He's just what you call one of those smacked monkey asses that just happen to be caught up in all this. But he seemed to be able to uh, probably be one of the leaders or whatever, the outspoken ones that were telling everybody what to do. So as he walked around to the edge, I pointed my shotgun barrel out the window, and it was less than a foot away. I mean, he could have almost reached up and touched it. And the impasse for the moment, I thought, maybe he'd have crapped himself right then and there. Just as I was getting ready to pull the trigger, I heard that voice. No, I felt that voice, and it echoes in your head. Don't shoot him, Kenneth. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. And I'm going to say, why am I going to ask myself why I'm not doing this? I'm talking to myself like it's 3D. It's crazy. And I moved out there and I looked at him and I said, "You speak English?" And he nodded his head, and with a real heavy accent, but I know he was literate enough to understand what's going on. I said, "Don't move. Don't even think about it. At this range, I can't miss. It's impossible. I'll splatter your brains all over that wall." So we're just standing there and it's dead quiet. Those guys are looking at me. I'm looking at him. I got him covered. They're looking at me, and I said, "Now what do we do? Holy shit. Where do we go from here?" Well, what came through the book is when you read it, it'll explain the feelings and stuff. And I told him, I said, "Look, this is our way out." That's exactly what was said in my voice in my head. "This is your meal ticket out of here, Kenneth." And almost nobody calls me Kenneth. I don't even call myself Kenneth. Last person I knew that it was my dad. And I said, "Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him." Okay. And then the light bulb went off. Ding. I said, "Hey, this is our way out." So basically, I said, "Look, I don't know who you guys are, what you want, okay? But whatever you think you're getting in here," I said, "it's going to cost you dearly." I said, "You got a lot of dead dying out there, and there's going to be a whole lot more." I said, "Now, we have non-combatants in here." I said, "Your people, my people, some people that don't even belong in this country." I said, "It's a mixture of people are here." And he pretty much, his eyeballs and let you know. And I said, told him, I said, "I'll make you a deal." I said, "You let these non-combatants, these women, and you let everybody go. You frisk them if you want. You let them go out the back gate. They get away free. You don't touch them. You don't harm them." I said, "Then me and my Marines will surrender ourselves, all of our equipment, everything we got, and you can have it." And then you can see, his eyeballs, thinking about what's going on. And I said, "No more your people die. No more my people die. You get us. You're the hero. It's a win-win situation for everybody." And he gives me this attitude. "And what if I don't?" I said, "I'll blow your friggin' head off. I'm going to decorate that wall with your brains." I said, "You better make a decision there, Mustasha, because this shotgun's getting mighty damn heavy." And I told him, and then my finger was on that trigger. It's impossible to miss. So you see his eyeballs going round and like a pinball machine. And I guess he figures he's got no way out of this but that. So it's funny things that in the book where you read it, he calls over number 2. Well, that's what I call him. They didn't have name tags, by the way. And he walks over right in front of my shotgun and starts talking to this guy. And I said, "This is great. I would BOGO, blast one, get one." I mean, now I got 2 in my front sight. This is awesome. So they're speaking in Farsi to each other, and they come to some agreement or something. And he starts to walk away, and I motioned him, "Yeah, go ahead, whatever." So basically, he went over, he gathered them around, and just his guys outside, and explaining something to him. We had I had talked with Jack, came over, and I'm still holding the shotgun on this guy's head. And Jack said, "Why the hell's he still breathing?" I said, "He's our meal ticket out of here, Jack. I just made a deal with him. If he goes through with it," I said, "Everybody," I said, "almost everybody," and he knows what that meant. Everybody but the Marines. "They're going to get out of here." I said, "They're going to go out the back door." I said, you get above them. You get above the transit in the back door there, the service door. And I said, "You stand over top of them." And I told this guy, no uncertain terms whatsoever, crystal clear. I said, "You can pat them down, but if there's any funny business, you molest any of the women that are there, you will be shot in your face." Do you understand that? And you can still see the ones that are dead, dying out there. The blood stains everywhere. And he knew we weren't joking. I said, "To make it happen now." Basically, it did. We opened the door. The Marines covered him, had him in a 2-point cover. and each one went out, and they got a slight frisk, and they went out back down the Kuchibijan gate, and they were gone. I remember the one secret girl looking at me, and you could almost see the terror in her eyes, that she was afraid that she was going to get caught or be identified, but also the, oh my God, thank you so very much for doing what you're doing to get us out of here. But she knew what it meant. She knew that, and the tears came up. She's probably never going to see me alive again. Oh well, it's the price of victory, right? Anyway, so they're out. They're out. As the last one came down, uh, I told Jack, and I said, and Henry, I said, get ready, guys. I said, bust everything up you got. Break the radio antennas off, take the crystals out, lose the batteries, disconnect the contacts. I said, beat your shotgun shell, beat the shotgun barrels down. I said, the few rounds we got left, break them open, stab them with a knife, make them useless. In other words, it's just normal protocol. I said, we're not going to let you have anything that that you could use against us or any other Marines. I said, any identification except for your ID dog tags, I said, gone. And I'm holding. I said, okay, now when I pull the bag in, I said, told the guy, I said, give us 3 or 4 minutes to unbarricade the door. And I said, that's when I knew. I said, man, that was my best hand. Well, I played as well as I could have at that point. And this guy, I'm telling you, Will, he was so pissed. You could see fire in his eyes. He wanted me so dead. I've never seen hate in a human being that I've seen come through his eyes. It's like dragon, oh my God. Anyway, so we put all our shit together in all our gear right there, and we stood there with our hands over our heads, and we told them, come on in. And they kicked through the door, and we started chanting in Farsi, Taslim, Taslim Koni. We surrender, don't shoot, we surrender. And this is the hardest part of any interview, even in the book, is that the worst mistake I could have ever made in my life is that I didn't take a head count, or I didn't direct either one of the other Marines to take a head count how many people left the embassy. We figured, hell, this is rats getting off a sinking ship. You don't have to, here's a door, you don't have to figure about it. But with everything else that was going on, the tension and she's, remember, I hadn't slept for almost 20 or 30 hours now. And the adrenaline dump was just, man, you're not thinking right. Anyway, so just as they kicked the door in, I see motion from my right side and a body move. And I look, and it's Minachi, my waiter buddy. He's hiding in the linen closet, the little linen closet that's there. They put all the tablecloths and whatever. He's hiding there, and as they kicked that door, I don't know whether he was startled or whatever caused him, But anyway, he ran right in front of me just as that guy came through the door, and he gave a burst of his sub gun right at me, right at my chest, and it hit Minachi, hit him square, and he drops, and I screamed, "Oh my God, no, Minachi, no!" And I kneeled down. These guys just rush in. They grab hold of Jack and Henry. They start beating them around, and they just all circle me. And I'm sitting there holding Minachi in my arms, and his blood's all over. His chest is all over. It's all the blood. And I said, "No, no, no, God, no! Why? What? I couldn't believe it. He died in my arms right there. Got to look him in the eyes and just see his eye glass over. They didn't close. It just the spark, the light just left him literally. And then that's when, in the book it says, I never saw it coming. I got this boot to the right side of my head, and it opened up my eye. And then the kick in the beating started, and they just pummeled the shit out of us. And it's probably one of the worst beatings I ever took. And what hurt was that, and as he stood me up, continue to punch you and kick you, he was looking at the pile of junk that were there, what was left of our equipment, and he was furious. I mean, just come unhinged and ranting and raving about, this is the way Americans make policy. This is the way you keep your word, and this is the way you negotiate. No wonder everybody wants you dead, and on and on and on and on. And I don't know what crawled up my ass to make me give him my own, personal Joe Pesci version of New Jersey. And I told him, about bleeding and stuff. And I said, hey, I told you could have me my Marines and my gear. I didn't tell you what condition it'd be in. Really funny. For about 3 seconds, they went to work on me again. Busted teeth. He said something in Farsi where the guy standing next to me and on my blind side, he had an AK-47 and it had a nice big wooden stock on it and hit me in the rib cage and cracked a couple of my ribs. So I went down on the floor. I mean, I was safer on the floor anyway. And they start putting the boots to you, and that's where that part of that thing with the toe later comes, because they had kicked me so many times that you crawl up in a fetal position, protect your vitals. And they fractured my sacrum coccyx bone, your butt bones. So you could barely move your legs. You couldn't, you couldn't get up, and you just took an ass whipping from hell right there. And that's where he had grabbed one of the shotguns. And you ever look at the Remington 870? It's a basic shotgun, but the P on it is for police, the unit for the most part, and it's got a folding stock, so it's very intimidating looking when you fold the stock forward on it. It looks kind of weird, but it's just a regular 870, 8 in a tube and one. And we had empty in our BDUs, battle dress uniforms. We had empty all the ammo that we got us. When we got the shotguns, we were allowed to take as much ammo as we wanted. So we were dumping shells of all types in our bags, in our pockets, just filling as much as we could. So you had everything from number 9 skeet shot for riots, number 6, number 2 double-aught buck, slugs. I mean, you had it. It was just a mixture. So while we were firing out there, a lot of times you'd be firing, pop like boom, and you say, whoa, well, that was a slug. If it wasn't tight enough in your shoulder and you hit a slug, you knew it. I said, but anyway, so he grabbed one of the shotguns and he was fumbling with it. And I said, good luck, because you got to know how to open the breech till you can get it open. Well, screw me if he didn't find it. He found a little slide release and he slided it back. And I don't know where he got it. It must have been one on the floor or somewhere, but he found a shell and he put a shell in there and he racked it home. Now, everybody knows how dynamic that is in the movies and TV. I know when you rack a shotgun shell home, but when it's done right in front of you, when it's pointed at you, and you just pissed this guy off to hell, you start to get a new form of fear and terror run through you, and you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And sure as shit, I mean, that look on his face, that demon look came back. I swear his face morphed into a demon. And he just looked at me and he pointed that gun at me, at the shotgun at me. And I went, son of a bitch, that's my own freaking shotgun. I could tell because of the way I had beat it down. And the bead on the front was bent a certain way. It was no longer round. It was bent. And I said, that's my own freaking shotgun. And then came that voice again. Kenneth, he's going to shoot you. Kenneth, he's going to shoot you. I want to say, shut up. I know he's going to shoot me. And you're waiting. And it's like forever. Bam! Just it happened. I saw his finger going towards the trigger. And I don't remember if I closed my eyes or not. I don't even remember feeling a shot. But a wave of like pressure came over me. And I put my hands up to my face because I felt it stinging in my face and my chest. I looked down, and I don't know if it was my blood or Menache's blood because I've been holding him. And I just looked up and passed out. Boom, gone, done. The last time I remember is being carried out of the caravans for a restaurant. It was freezing ass cold up there in February, and we were down to nothing but they had taken our flak jacket off and the t-shirts, basically nothing there. So I could. There's blood over top of my eyes, and I could see it. So, and I tell you in the book, I remember seeing Jack and Henry lined up against the wall, and they were in a surrender position. They looked like they were getting ready to be executed. And it's the last thing I said is, Lord, please, Lord, do not let them get killed. If I started this, I said, let them live whatever it takes. I said, you got me. I said, I'm not going to live through this. I said, don't take them. And I remember looking up and seeing the American flag. It was being taken down at that time. I don't know. I couldn't see all of the pole, but I could see where the top of the pole down into the wooded wood line as somebody's taking down the flag, or they had cut the lanyard and it was coming down. I looked over and saw a little bit of the smoke coming out of the embassy, the chancery building where the ambassador was. So I knew the place was, just about overrun. And out I went. I was unconscious. I don't know who took me where or how or what or how I got off the compound. Nobody did. No, because only the Americans that were there were gone, and Jack and Henry were faced up against the wall. So just me, God, and the devil, and that's the three of us went out the main gate until we got to that hospital.
Oh, wow. I'm here with Kenneth Kraus, United States Marine Corps, retired. We're sponsored tonight by Penny A. Cox Esquire for all your lawyer needs. If the popo's chasing you, call Penny. It's really wild to think about pointing a shotgun at you. It's really wild to think about you going to the bathroom in the middle of combat and then having a talk with the Lord. And there's so many more times in the book. I mean, we haven't even got started yet in the stuff that you, and it is absolutely amazing. Can I ask you a question, and maybe we segue away from the story for a minute? After you've been through these Lord help me situations, and you say, give me any kind of sign, any kind of peace, and it begins and it shows up, how does that affect the rest of your life? Is that something that you've begun to rely on, or is that with just a flash in the pan? Does that not happen again? It does, doesn't it?
It has potential to happen with anybody that's there. I would say in my particular instance, in my life, it depends on how you believe it. You believe it's just happenstance and it's luck. Okay. If you think that things have to line up for that, for instance, when they first had their first volley of fire, these windows that are there are the casement, square glass casement windows. They're double paned, real thick. And there was hundreds of these windows from about your chest up. Long story short. So when they started just firing anywhere into the Caravanserai restaurant, all we could do was duck down against the wall, and have all the bullets go, into the dining area and the kitchen and whatnot. And hopefully it went over our heads, But then all of a sudden, when they went to their reload, we jumped back up and we fired them back at them, back and forth several times. Well, we're having a gunfight at less than 50 yards. Rifles. 90% of everybody had a rifle or a shotgun. We're firing each other. Boom, 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 boom. And then you fire until you go dry. And then you say transition and you go to your handgun. Boom, boom, boom. And you're screaming at the guys next to you, let's make sure that nobody runs completely out of ammo before somebody's, covering this. And just one of those things I'm looking at, I said, we're dropping these guys like flies. It's like a video game, which didn't exist back then, but nowadays, since I've seen it, and I'm looking at it and they're getting hit, they're getting shot. I see the flash of a muzzle of a weapon, and the bullet goes by you. That's the weirdest freaking sensation in the world, is to be shot at and hear that bullet, or see that bullet hit the area behind you. And then you shoot back. It was like, I swear to God, there was angels standing around protecting us. Either that, or the only thing else I can say is they were the worst. 20 or 30 of them were the worst goddamn shots ever put on the planet. That's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, we were picking them off 1, 2, 3. Hitting them in the leg, hitting them in the knee, anywhere we could. It was just a chaotic, shoot back and forth. And I mean, it was like John Wick on steroids. I ain't shitting you. Now you look at that and you're saying, how did not one of us ever even get a nick? There's your question. You answer it yourself. Depends on how you're going to look at it. Were you just lucky? Were they bad shots? Was it not your day to die? Or was it something else? And it's going to be up to you or me, myself, in that position. From that day and the next week that I'm going to have to live through that hell, what it was. It's my perception. It's what I want to believe in it. If I just want to blow it off, I said, yeah, it's good. But, it was lucky, coincidental, whatever. Fine, then no harm, no foul. But if you're going to, put a situation like that and your ass on the line and then not give thanks and praise to where it should be given, I wouldn't want to have to go to that bank account again in the future, if you know what I mean. So there's no reason for me not to have understood or believed miracles and what had happened. Because once I get out of there, we go on with the book. To answer your question, I know I get kidnapped out of the hospital and taken to prison. After that, I got to sit there. All these things that are happening, you got nothing else to do. It's like being a prisoner. Besides your wounds and your pain, you start to wonder and you start to think, how about this? But what that? How about if this? But would have happened? Oh my God! There's so many things that could have went wrong. So many things that they didn't line up. We wouldn't be here today. So, you want to call it coincidence? You want to call it luck? That's on you. Me, I know there were miracles because I saw more come after that. And then later, when I got out of Marine Corps and I retired, I saw it again. And I put 20 years on the street as a cop. I seen a lot more there too. So it's not coincidental to me.
Amen.
And when I've asked for things and I've gotten it, believe it and thank them for it. And then try to keep your ass out of trouble so you don't have to ask again.
In spirituality, I believe that the Holy Spirit talks to me through a feeling. I feel it inside. I know it's the ego when I'm talking words, when I'm yapping, when I'm talking to myself, I recognize that as the ego many times. When I feel it, when I feel something that makes me move, and I feel a warm peace over me, that's when I know it's the Holy Spirit. And you explained so much of the same thing. Let's explain to me. I didn't quite understand all of this when it was happening, when I was reading in the book. Help me understand how it was critical that somebody took a picture of you in the hospital to find you versus your own unit didn't seem to be looking for you. Help me understand that. Help me understand how this picture is what really got you notoriety and space.
The photograph of me, yeah. So I wake up in I call it a field hospital because it's a makeshift hospital. It looked like it used to be maybe a clinic or something, but it wasn't quite a hospital the way it was. You usually see things in the walls that are meant for oxygen or things like that. So these things, everything was brought in on poles, and so I really never to this day knew where I was. And when I wake up, I'm bandaged up all over my chest. What had happened from going? Let me roll back for a second about that shotgun. This is another part of the miracle, is that if it had been a slug, it had exploded the end of that tube off because it was dented so bad. I said, we've gone through this several times with FBI agents, ATF agents. They want to know, how the hell can you not be cut almost in half that close range with a shotgun? I said, well, first of all, we don't even know what kind of round it was. Double-aught buck or, number 9 skeet or anywhere in between. It could have been 100 different types of rounds. I said, second of all, he said, when we've gone through this several times, is that the shooter, my bud, he had put the shoulder length down. So when he collapsed that, he's holding it as a pistol. He's got a pistol grip. Okay. Now he's looking down the barrel of that, and that barrel again, it's not nice and round and smooth bore anymore. It's been bent. It's been beat up. So when he's holding it and he's looking at it, he's holding it not in his shoulder. Okay, he's just holding a pistol grip. And as he looks at me, I think he didn't realize the amount of pressure that it takes, about 3 or 4 pounds of pressure on a shotgun to pull it. So he wasn't ready for it till he got his finger on there. So put all those three together. Okay, again, all three together. Coincidences? Didn't have it in the shoulder, didn't have it tight, didn't have it pointed down directly at me, just had it in a pistol grip, and it wasn't a slug. And when it went off, it kicked back on his face, and that's where most of that blast hit me in my chest and my face and my arms, and it just rolled me over. Miracle? I don't know. You call it. All three of those things got to line up, or if it's a slug, or if it's any other thing but that, I don't have a chest, I don't have a head anymore. So See, so now you fast forward to where you're at is that, I wake up in this hospital and this hospital room, and I go to sit up and I look up and I said, I just got a t-shirt on and I got this big bandage on my stomach. I look down, I go, what the fuck? And I look around, I got IV in, I got, I don't know if it's blood. I got some shit in one arm and some stuff in the other arm, and I don't know. I look around and I could hear voices, but they're Farsi or something like that. They're not English anyway. And you can smell the alcohol, you can smell the urine, you're in a medical facility. And I go to sit up and I went, I got this gown on. And I lift this gown up and gone. My boots are gone, all my military gear, my dog tags, everything. I'm there, nothing not even in my skivvy drawers. I'm buck ass naked with the little panty things they put around behind you. And I'm wondering how I got there, where I am to begin with. And then this woman is looking like a nurse in scrubs. She walks by, and I try to call her attention, and she sticks her head in, and I start asking her questions. I just assume she spoke English. I don't know. And she was saying, "Shush, shush, shush! You don't talk. You don't talk." And I said, "Why? What's the matter?" Like, she tried to keep me quiet, as if she didn't want people to know that I was awake or something. That's what it seemed like. And she says, "You hush, you don't talk, and I'll come back." I said, "Okay." So I just closed my eyes, and every time somebody went by, I just, pretended like I was still out, so nobody would want to, stop in, have a conversation. So she came back, and while she was gone, there's this American type guy. He's actually, I think, British, because he didn't speak much, but he was a Anglo-Saxon looking guy, and he pops his head in and he says, "Hey, you from the embassy?" And of course, being trained where we are, I don't have any idea or anything. I'm not going to answer, who he is. I don't know what's going on. So I just looked at him, and he said, you're from the embassy, right? And I told him, I said, "Yeah, he said, you're Marine, right?" I guess he could tell by my haircut or something, or he had a little bit of background or something, but he'd worked his way in there. And since he's that far, and that with his little bit of accent, I figure he's not an Iranian. So and I can see he's got a camera. And I said, "Okay, yeah." I said, I'm a Marine Guard from the embassy. And he says, "It's been overrun. It's been taken over." He says, "So what happened to you?" And I told him I got shot. And he says, there's no news coming out of the embassy. They got it surrounded. I says, the flag's not up. He says, there's parts of a couple buildings burning. I said, we can't get hold of anybody inside. And I said, "Wow." I said, "Yeah, there was a firefight and a siege." I said, "I got wounded. I got taken out. I had no clue what's going on with it." So he just had another couple short little questions, and he took a picture of me, and that's that picture you see me laying in that bed. And off he went. And I try to get his name, and till this day, I mean, I've spent hundreds of dollars making all kinds of inquiries everywhere through UPI, API, you name it, and trying to find out what this guy's name was that took that picture. Because I'll tell you how important that thing was. Is that he takes a picture and goes off. A few minutes later, the girl's name was Souza, because I could see her name tag, and it's written in English and in Farsi. So she was saying, shush, shush, shush. She goes, "They think you're Sia." I said, "What? Sia?" I said, "CIA." I said, "No, I'm not CIA." I said, "Don't let them think that." I said, "Where am I?" She said, "You're a hospital." I said, "What hospital?" Not that it mattered. I mean, I wouldn't know which one from the other. And I said, "Well, where's everybody?" I'm just firing questions at her, asking her what's going on. She said, "You don't talk, you don't talk." I said, "Just be quiet. They think you're CIA." I said, "I'm not." I said, "Where's all my gear? Where's my identification? Where's my dog tag?" I said, "Look at my, it's got my name on my uniform and on my boots, everything. You'll see I'm a Marine, et cetera, et cetera." And she just didn't want anything to do with it. She wanted to make sure that we stayed quiet. And I said, "Okay." He said, "What's next?" "Well," she said, "we'll come back." I said, "The doctor must need to see you." I said, "Who cleaned me up? Who fixed me up?" I mean, it's all these little questions she couldn't answer or wouldn't answer. I don't know. Maybe she was told not to give me any information. I don't know. Anyway, a few minutes later, these two goons came in, and they had nasty old crusty uniforms on. They look like the same type of ilk of the guys that assaulted us at the embassy. They had weapons on, and I said, "Okay, obviously you're not the hospital security," you know. So they come in and they're barking Farsi at me. I don't understand a damn word they're saying. And then Sousa comes around the door and starts, barking at them in Farsi. Well, they ripped the IV out of my arms, and whatever fluid that was, starts squirting and things like that. She jumped in between the brave little girl and looked like David and Goliath. She pushes them back and she's screaming at him in Farsi. And she turns around and pulls a needle out that was still stuck on my arm and bandages it, and looks like she's giving me some care and comfort. And they don't like that, so they shove her into the closet there. And I guess they gave her some kind of threat. But out comes the handcuffs. And I said, okay, fine. This is par for the course. Little I know, then right after the handcuffs, blindfold goes on. And I said, they blindfolded me. I said, okay, no big deal. I mean, they know it disorients you. You can't see where you're going. I get it. But then comes the hood. Now we're taught in SEER school and we were taught, intelligence is that they blindfold you because they don't want you to see them, and I already seen them, okay? Or they don't want you to see where you're going, etc. Or when they put the hood on you, that's bad news because that means they don't want people outside seeing who you are. In other words, if they drag me out of here, I don't know, I'm screaming butt naked like I am, anybody that sees me will see who I am and recognize me. Okay, that's what the assumption we went on later when we got debriefed. So when they put the hit on, that means they don't want the people in there to see exactly who you are, and that's when it gets really scary, and it's not good because that now they don't want anybody to see who's taking you where, and that's exactly what they wanted to do. And it also disorients you, and you don't realize where you're going. It shuts down your besides your eyes and your ears, everything just seems in your mind to shut down. So it hobbles you that way mentally. And off we go into the cold, and just my ass hanging out, and throw me in the vehicle, and it's freezing ass cold. You read the book how many times I've never been so cold in my life, shivering so bad you can't even hardly take a breath. Your chest muscles are contracting, and you can't get a full breath of air, let alone with the pain going on, from being shot and being beat and everything else, and no medication whatsoever. I mean, it was bad enough. I was just lucky enough to get a glass of water from Sousa when she had the chance to get it to me. And off we went in the back of this vehicle, over to Evin Prison. And people that want to Google that or chill that out, that's EVIN, Evin Prison. And it's one of the worst torture centers that the Shah's secret police, the Savak, had established while he was there. And the stuff that goes on in there is unbelievable. If you get the special edition, you'll see the pictures of literally it's a dungeon left over from the Crusades, I think, and the medieval type of armament and torture equipment that they use on people. And if you've read the book, it was some of the torture that goes on in there, and a lot of it might have been for whatever reason to get intelligence out of people. I don't know. I'm not justifying that. But a lot of it too also was just to be mean and barbaric, and it's like a payback for all the times the Shah's people, Savak did it to other people. So it's typical in a revolution like that. The new guys come in, they empty all the cells of all the political prisoners. They usually just execute the crazy ones, and the real bad rapers and murderers, they just execute them anyway. Nobody's going to say anything, and then they start to fill the cells back up with everybody that worked for the pageantry and the government that they had just overthrown. So it's just to clean the house and reciprocating everything. And when I got to Evin Prison, it's where the fun really started. So let me finish some. Fast forward real quick to before we start getting into the Evin Prison. If you want to know about that photograph. Well, what happened is now the Ayatollah Khomeini realized that he can't allow the Americans to be wiped out or be killed at the embassy. He's not even been in power 30 days yet. He's not been there 2-3 weeks, and he's still trying to congeal and conglomerate his power together. So bad that he had to call in Yasser Arafat and the PLO, which are not Farsi, they're not Persians, they're Arabs. They don't get along too well with the other side, but they're also ones that are bought and paid for So they're kind of like the Gestapo police, going in and keeping the Fedayeen and the Mujahideen and all the other deans away from each other, because all these tribes together didn't exactly like the Shah, and they would try to overthrow him. But by the same token, they weren't just going to turn around now when Khomeini's in power, give up their possible all their weapons and say, yeah, we'll just listen to you. They want a piece of the action. So that's where it goes. They have to quell all these little tribal monkeys down, and get them to cooperate. And so let me see, where were we? Oh yeah, the so what happens is the Khomeini sends over his marshals and they run these guys off. Okay. And now we're back to being what's norm. Put the embassy back together. The ambassador's still alive. And freaking goddamn, the United States doesn't even realize it yet. It's been like 8 hours, and somebody calls the State Department and they go, do you know that your embassy in Tehran has been overrun, or people have been shot and there's dead and dying everywhere? Your flag's not there. We can't get hold of it, and they went on and on and on. Because again, there's no internet. So I go, no, really? What happened? A bunch of idiots. So when they realized what was happening, they said, oh, yeah, man. They said, we've lost that embassy. It's gone to hell. So they did basically fast forward to a body count and see who's got out, who's there, who's not there. And, the people that got away, for the most part, the secret squirrels that are accounted for, don't know how they got accounted for, but they probably went to a safe house or some other friendly embassy. Who knows? They got their own protocols. They did a head. They did a head count.
I'm blown away at how much of an inside job this is. How much they let y'all hanging for they just it really makes me mad.
Wait until you read a special edition that came out years later of all the declassified debriefs we had. Whoa, that's even more fun. Trust me. So anyway, they do a head count and they realize, I'm not around. What happened? Well, the only two that saw what happened was Sergeant Jackie Nohos and a Corporal Stanley Lochak. He goes, yes, and whatever they told them, said, yeah, he got shot, wounded, whatever. He's gone. We don't know who got him or where he be. And that's where the question started. I said, okay, the Americans now are aware, and Ambassador Sullivan's talking with the President Jimmy Carter, and they said, okay, well, what's this going to be, et cetera. I said, well, there was no government at the time. Shapur Bakhtiar and Abu Hassan Bani Sadr, they were just wanted to be in charge, and everybody wanted to be in charge here. The Shah is gone, and there's a complete vacuum of Amir Antezam, all these guys that just want to, jump up, and be a spokesman and want. I'm the minister. I'm the prime minister. I'm the second prime minister. I'm the prime minister. I mean, it's a joke. It was a circus. So really try to talk to who's in charge over there. Nobody is running the show. For the most part, you can't call up and 911 and say, hey, we need help somewhere. No one is going to respond to there. You don't have numbers. Half the country was lit up and blown up to begin with. Anyway, so when they start looking they say, yeah, they took Kraus out of here. I said, where'd he go? And we don't know. Who took him? We don't know. Nobody knows squat azul. Nothing. Nobody can get anything out. So everybody start looking, and they start looking. That's where about a day later they show this picture of me in the newspaper about one of the commandos at the embassy that shot and killed the Iranians. That's where they realized, oh, really? So they went over to the hospital, and they come looking for me, and they say, okay, we're looking for our Marine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we want to get him back, except and everybody played stupid. So he was never here. We didn't see him. We didn't work on him. And of course, records back then were nothing. You came in, you got patched up, and you left. They didn't even know anything about it. They said, that's bullshit. We know he's here. Here's a picture of him. And the guy that's standing next to him in the bed is that guy right over there. I said, so we know he was here in this room, in this bed. Where'd he go? Who took him? And see, whoever took the embassy, at that time, the Mujahideen Khalq, or the Fedayeen Khalq, they had other little factions in there, and it goes into play with the Russians and the Strategic Arms SALT 1, SALT 2, Strategic Arms Limitations talks, where we're watching them watch them. Who watches somebody count. with the nuclear weapons, to digress for a second, is that up there in those mountains, I mean, we have a lot of listening stations. We got a lot of human intelligence that works out of those mountains. You look right over the Caspian Sea, right into Russia. So, I mean, all our secret squirrels are always, watching, seeing what they're doing, listening to them. And they work out of the embassy. What's new? So when the embassy fell, basically, we no longer have a station per se that we can work out of that was safe and secure. And the Russians just loved that. And the Russians were paying the Fedayeen, a lot of money to actually help take over the embassy and shut it down. And of course, the Russians aren't involved in it at the time. Again, this is not the friendly Russians you're dealing with today. This is the Soviet Union, USSR. Okay. We're dealing with NATO at the time. The Iron Curtain is still up for people that don't realize it. Berlin is still a separated city. It's the NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. Okay, Czechoslovakia, Estonia, Lithuania, any of these countries, they didn't exist. Yugoslavia didn't exist. Romania, Bulgaria, all behind the communist line. Oh yeah, that's right. It was only 1989. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now you see where we're talking? Yeah. So you're going from Vietnam era to going through this time, is that when the embassy fell there, we're still, neck and neck looking to Russians. There's still a DMZ, no man's zone everywhere. Ask anybody that was in the army over there in the Fulda Gap, hundreds of tanks all the time just staring at the Russians. Ask anybody that was in the Air Force at the time during that. They were on alert all the time. You could press a nuclear button any day of the week. It's crazy. And then you got a major ally of the United States, oil-rich country, by the way, falling apart and then maybe falling into the hands of communists. Big problem. Well, do you ever hear that version on the news? Hell no. You would today if it was, yeah, because everybody and his brother and his dog is going to have a version or know something about it, But nah, back then, it took you 2-3 days to get anything to get out. So when they walked in, they said, "Look, they said, we found him. The Fedayeen turned me over to somebody at the hospital. They just said, look, he's of no use to us. Patch him up, and we don't give a shit what you do with him." Okay. Whoever came in to grab me, they were not part of the hospital nor part of the Fedayeen. They grabbed me out. They're paid off by the Russians to say, hey, did you realize that we got an American wounded over here in the at the hospital? Yeah, hush, hush, hush. He could be CIA, hush, 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 whatever's saying going on. Well, the Russians going to say, go get his ass now. And that's what they did. They went over and snatched my ass up because they don't know who I am. Am I the ambassador? Am I the cook? They don't know who I really am. Once they took all my clothes, my ID away. And, it's not really in my best interest to convince them that I am in the intelligence, cadre of the personnel there. Not a good idea at all. So we go into, survival mode and intel where, you get taught this stuff in embassy school, where we're now over and they said, look, we see the picture. He's there. Where is he now? No hablo Pablo. Nobody knows where it can. Nobody cares, really. Right. That's where they said, oh, he's been taken to Evin Prison and he will go. He's going to go on trial for shooting Iranians. What? Jimmy Carter said, no. That ain't going to happen. And I said, well, it's happening as we speak. Okay. That's when things started getting sticky and dicey. And they weren't so sure. And then when you read through the book, you'll see the different types of torture that I went through, the different versions of who came in to talk to me, that the Russians were there, the PLO was there. Everybody came in to try to find out who I was and if I could help them and offer me my way out of there, if I would just give up the information and secrets that I had and some of the training and just a myriad of information they wanted from me. Different people wanted different things. And the tortures and the things that you read in there and the beatings, and you'll see that when they guess, they figured out one of two things. One, I wasn't going to give them any information, or they ID'd me with the people that were out back at the embassy and the State Department, realizing, yes, that's who he is. He's the same guy in the bed, that's in the prison. Okay, yeah, he's just a low lump Marine security guard. He's not anybody that we didn't know. So the Russians blow me off, the PLO blow me off, everybody blows me off. And then what are you going to do with me? I'm a hot potato. I'm festering. I'm wounded. That's where your thing came in with the toe. They break the toe. They snap the toe in a different direction. And some of the other tortures in there, and they get to a point. They go, well, what do we do with this guy? He's he's a flaming bag of camel turds. Nobody wants him. Nothing we can do with him. So they eventually they decided to put me on trial for murder, and I had about a 20, 30-minute murder trial where I was found guilty and sentenced to death by the Mullah courts. And that's a whole chapter by itself in itself. And, you know,
The
in between there, the miracles that happen is that when you read the book, you'll see things that line up and you go, there's no way. No, they tell it all here would either bore people or if they enjoy it more if they read it themselves. And people will agree, say, yeah, if you don't believe in miracles, you can believe how it could be believed as a miracle. And that's just where that's at.
Do me a favor and explain about the value of the friend that you made in prison. There was somebody that helped you.
Abdal. I had this little dream that he's a reincarnation of Menachi that came back to help out. See, they let all the crazies out. They either murdered them, shot them. They took them upstairs. We got pictures of it if you get the special edition, that's some of the pictures you got there. They're really gruesome. Is that, how should I put it? When they came in, and if they got the rapists and the murderers and the crazies, then every country in the world's got their psycho criminals. They come in and they can't do anything with them. They just murder them. They just go in, they shoot them in the head, and just throw them out in the street. Period. They don't care. But the political ones now, they'll torture. But the new regime that comes in lets all the other political ones out because that was the ones the Shah didn't like or didn't wasn't getting along with the Shah. So they're basically allies for the most part. And you're going to get, if they're worth anything to you, value wise, you're now giving them their freedom. So you're going to be, on your side. Then they start filling the chambers and cells up with people that work for the Shah at the time. So, like I said, they clean house and bring it back in. And Abdal, when I was brought into the cell and just thrown into this cell. Now, I described the cell there as these open cells down a hallway. They just let the door stay open. You're not going to go anywhere. I mean, where are you going to go? You can't get out. It's just there. You just get you a little piece of carpet for a rug, and you lay on your little bunk that just is stuck in the side of the wall with chains on it. If you're lucky enough to get one. And it's the filthiest, stinkingest place. You've read in the book. You see, besides the next thing of how cold it was and how nasty is that the smell, the actual smell of death and blood, and who God only knows what else is in there, is beyond disgusting. It's something make you just want to puke 24/7. Anyway, so make friends with a guy by the name of Abdal, and he was everything that Menachi was, and very intelligent. He had been a pilot for a company that flew for government contracts with the Shah. So when they grabbed him, they thought he was, could have been a pilot or anything. They just had him locked up in there until they could either find out through an investigation if they gave a shit about a real true investigation, which they didn't. Everything was just accusations. And that's what he was waiting for. Was for his day to come when he was going to have to give his testimony. If they believe him, they might let you go. If they don't believe you, they take you to the roof and put a bullet in your head. Cut and dry, black and white. That's it. No. So when they started railroading me in there, but so I'm going to go on trial for my life. I know you read the book there. It's better to read it than it is. I told him, I said, look, I don't recognize this court nor your authority to have any power over me. That didn't matter. They're going to do what they want to you anyway. Okay. I said, but you people are religious. I said, you have, this sense that, Allah gives you the rights to do certain things. I said, but he's not without a background of justice. I said, you've been even in tribal law, everything out here is you have laws and you have certain ways to do things, not just haphazard for you to come in here and overthrow the Shah because you don't like the way he's doing things. And you're doing the exact same thing. You're no better. I said, so you keep that shit up. And I said, I can tell you what, in less than 10 years, somebody's going to be in here and this thing's going to be turned around on top of you. I said, if you really want to keep your government, I said, for the people and have a new country, I said, you're going to have to come up with some type of standard. I said, in which you judge all people. I said, and I went on about, what some of the rights were like and some of the evidence and things like that in an American court of law, and I said, I defy you to show me the bullets that I used, the weapons, the witnesses, the videos, anything of me shooting and killing anybody. I mean, it was a fair fight in a fair battle. They weren't as good as us. We were better than them. So, bafangu. And I tell them, you get as crazy as you want. But at this point, you didn't care. You've been beat up, shot up, stabbed. They've attempted to sexually assault you. I mean, everything that's left. And then you know that America doesn't have any clue where you are. Okay, nobody's taken. It's not like somebody's taken pictures of you, put you on the internet. Didn't exist. They didn't take booking pictures of you. You don't exist. You're just thrown into a dungeon, and you're rotting away. So why not give them a piece of your mind? And the mullahs that were at the table at the time, you read the story, is that they couldn't answer the time. They wasn't ready for this little Joe Pesci from New Jersey kid, to bite back at them and challenge them, So they brought me back 2 or 3 times back and forth to the same cell. And the very first person book that I had was called The American is Cell Number 5, and that was written by Andrew Jones, and it's a Reader's Digest version. September of '79 it went out. If you ever want to get that, it's a unique story, but it's not 1/10 of the amount of detail that went on here. All same truth, but only allowed a little bit of picture. They didn't have control of the embassy over there. They didn't want me to look like a hero, a John Wayne guy, murdering all these guys when I came back, because they couldn't get to me once I got back, but they could take it out on Americans that were still there. It's a good point to know.
Right. Explain to me. So you received a death sentence that was delivered to you in a way that it's just amazing. When the way the story plays out, and then what you say afterwards that you were feeling about when it happened. Tell me about how, if you don't mind, go over how you found out you were sentenced to death.
Well, the mullahs that were there, they're the religious judges, per se, what they say go. And so they brought me back to my cell. And it's like the 3rd or 4th time that I've been taken out by different entities and then interrogated, tortured, whatever, and then brought back. And every time I come back, Abdel's sitting there and goes, "What is it with you?" I said, "You're the only American, and you're the only one that has, it's a quandary of why when we're taken out of here, we're either let go or we're executed." I said, "You can hear the rifles up there, on the roof at times if it's quiet enough." I said, "I don't know." They said, they bring me in, they bring me out. They got to drag me in and out because I can barely walk. I mean, my guts are hanging out of me. I'm septic as hell right now. So I've figured out another day or so, my blood's going to be so septic, I'll be dead. So, staph infection, or God knows what kind of a infection here I'm going to have. I said, so it's just a matter of holding on, really. I said, I'm going to hold on. They're just going to come in here one day to roust me, and I'm going to be cold and dead. Really, that's it. You get to that point. And he was saying, it's amazing, Sergeant. He says, it's just amazing. And he had helped me a lot there. That the very first time we were supposed to get something to eat, some food, they just bought this big, like 5-6 gallon, it looked like a bucket, but it's a wooden bowl full of barenge, rice, and the food that it was there, it was rice and some little red and green little peas, like chickpeas. And till this day, I call it mystery meat, because there's no way I can tell you what that was. They're not going to waste steak, or beef on prisoners. It's a Muslim country, so there is no pork. It's either horse or camel meat or something, but it was gray, and I don't care how hungry you were, you couldn't get the smell and the texture in your mouth. You couldn't eat it. I said, I know. And then they put down a couple of pitchers of water, and that was it. And they put it there, and they left it there until it was empty, and then they came on a cart, and they pick it up. So if you weren't there, or if you were sleeping or passed out, and you weren't there for that chow, it was gone. And you didn't get it 3 times a day. So because if you got it 3 times a day, you could count, all right, three meals, 3 days I've been here. You don't know. When you fall asleep, there's no light except for that little light bulb that's in there. You don't see when you fall asleep, you don't know. It's time deprivation. You don't know if you slept for an hour, a minute, a day. Other people just coming in and going out of the cell and finding, places that are cleaner than other places to sleep. So how long have I been asleep? You don't know. And so total time deprivation, and the pain and everything else, for the most part, you really just don't care. I know, this is There's no light or day, and you only get one meal a day, and you better be ready for it when it comes in. And Abdel, he would tell me how to get things done with eating properly. Don't stick both your hands in the bowl right there, because one hand is meant for cleaning, the other hand's meant for eating. And where what they called was the bathroom. I'm not even going to tell your viewers how disgusting and nasty it was, because I can't. It was bad enough for me to have to put it in writing the first time. So if you didn't have your dinner, you don't want to be hearing it tonight. Trust me. And so yeah, you learn things as you do to go through there to pass the time away. And there were some times when they come in and they grab a guy and off he goes, and you never see him again. And for the most part, if you hear fusillades of rifle fire, was it him? Was it somebody else? Did he go home? And you just wait your turn. So actually, when I barked back at them and challenged their authority and challenged their evidentiary rules and everything else, and showing them, basically embarrassed them, that it was just the three of those monkeys up there that were making this court, and not in a country that's going to have a jurisdiction or stand on any type of court of law. Kind of embarrassed them for the most part. And this whole time, as I'm having to tell one guy in English who tells another guy in Farsi who now has the right, authority to tell the three mullahs. So, it's a circus. And I don't know what the heck they told him. I know what I meant to tell him, and I don't know how it, ended up being translated on their end. But anyway, they get that same look in their eye that the guy that shot me had, and just disdain, and couldn't wait to find a reason to kill me. And they shoved me off, and sure as shit. Again, you don't know. You don't ever see light of day, windows, anything. You don't know. Uh, and they said for about the third or fourth time I came back to my cell, Abdel says, "You're just amazing." He says, "They take you to come in, they come out." And he tried to remember it. He tried to give me the word yo-yo. He says, "What's this word?" And he was explain something to me. And the Persian boy said, "Well, we don't have that here in Persia." So they didn't have a word. They didn't have a version, Persian word for yo-yo. And I said, it's crazy. I said, that's what I was, going in and out, back and forth. And I said, well, I wish they'd make up their mind, because every time they drag me around, I said, they're just open up these wounds. I said, look what they did to my toe. I said, I'm freezing cold. I said, I'm not going to last much longer. I said, I'm gone. And he would say, I remember they just come down one time, and I heard them say American in cell number 5, something Panj, Yak, Du, Sayer, Char, Pan, Sheesh, Alf. You learn the numbers. You learn things when you're there. So, Pan, cell number, American cell number 5, Marine is cell number 5. So I could hear them repeating something. I said, oh, what's up with that? And this guy that I nicknamed him number 2, because he was like a go-between, a skinny little shit, but he spoke very good English, and probably educated in the West. I don't know. Anyway, when he would come in, and he was saying he didn't know where I was before, because he never came in before. But now this is the first time he came all the way down into my cell, and he stood there with the other ones, and he talked to something to Abdal. I remember Abdal and him having a short Farsi conversation, and Abdal just dropping his head down. I said, hey, what is it? And so he's in English, said, all your questions have been answered. They said they had all the evidence they need. I said, your trial will not resume. I said, so what's that mean? He says, you have been found guilty. I said, guilty of what? And he said, shooting and murdering Iranians. I said, oh, really? How nice. And I didn't even realize where we were going with this. And he said, I said, so what becomes of that? What's the next? And he says, shrugs his shoulder. Goes, you'll be shot. Maybe tomorrow. We'll let you know. He just turns around and walks out. And Abdal said something to one of the other guys, which means shot or executed or something. And all the other ones in the cells started looking around, and they realized what was going on. But that asshole came all the way down there to tell me that, we found the information we need, and you're not going to see it, and you're going to be shot tomorrow. Plain and simple. I mean, Will, it's like he just said, hey, it's 12 o'clock, tea time. Hey, that's what he might as well have said. Wow. And it's so when it hits you, you say, oh, good, great. You don't want everybody to know that you just got, mentally castrated. And you sit down and you realize, like, fuck, man. Nobody knows I'm here. So when they do shoot me, What are they going to do with my body? Where are they going to, what are they going to, all these different questions go on in your head, you know? Then you go over and you lay down and cuddle up in a corner and, literally wait to die. And that's when the demons come home. That's when, if Satan is ever going to make you doubt or deceive you, this is when it comes at the weakest. I know. And I'm just, am I afraid? Am I scared? I mean, how am I going to go out like James Cagney and spit in their eye? Or am I going to be a whimpering little wussy? Or, I mean, how are they going to do this? Just put you in a chair and put a bullet in your head. How's it even going to happen? It's a myriad of questions going through. And I mean, it's so debilitating mentally and emotional wise. It just wipes you out. You're continually thinking about it until you just pass out and you can't think anymore. And then, you come to, and you realize that there's nothing you can do about it. Not a damn thing. You make peace with yourself and your Lord. You go over your regrets in life, and you tell them, I'm an American fighting Marine. I'm a United States Marine. I serve in the forces that guard our country and our way of life. I came in here prepared to give my life in their defense, and I'll go out doing the same thing.
Amen.
Bring it on. So, you think about it, and he says, what's really the most important thing? You get that voice, like you said, be the Holy Spirit, and you say, okay, I'm making, it's just me and my soul, me, Kenny Kraus, and my soul. No one else matters. There is nobody else on this planet, just me and God right now. You want to talk to me? You want to say something? Here's your chance. Get it on.
Wow.
So you'll pour your soul, you'll pour everything out. You will not lie. You will not degrade. You will not hide anything when you're in that position. You will be as open and honest as you ever possibly could be. You'll bare your soul to a point where you can't even think of how bare it could be. And then you say, okay, is there anything left? No, that's it. Life, bye. And the only thing that comes to mind on the personal side is that I don't really, I've given this 1,000 times. I've thought this and felt this, Will. Dozens of times I've given this very, very same commentary, especially in the book. What were you thinking, Ken? What went through your mind at the time? And the one thing that kept going over and over, that keeps coming back after all these 47 years, it wasn't even if it's going to hurt. Because I was standing up there in that battlefield. I was shooting. I saw him, guy looking right at me, and he pulls the trigger, boom, and I boom back. He dies, I don't. Miracle. One of the 5, at least. And everything that went through. And I said, no, it doesn't even bother me how much this is going to hurt. Because right now, there's so many things that hurt on me, I don't think I'm going to feel it. I just, in a gesturing way, I was just hoping that they shoot straight, don't make a mess of it after, reload, because I already seen what kind of shitty shots they were. So get it right the first time, will you? Pricks.
I laughed at that in the book. I thought it was fitting, right? It's fitting that you're just asking, please, at least shoot straight.
Yeah, don't make a mess of the damn deal. Anyway, so, you're just giving yourself over and you say, okay, Lord, that's it. I can only be so much sorry. I mean, I can only ask for so much forgiveness. I can only take your spiritual salvation, your plan with Jesus Christ to the nth limit right now. What more do you want? You want me to come home? You want me to get on my knees? You want me to be a prodigal son? Here I am. I can't get any lower. I can't fear anymore. I can't be terrorized anymore. I am nothing. I am absolutely nothing. If we don't finish this conversation by the time I open my eyes, they won't even have to shoot me. I'm probably going to be so sick and I'm going to be dead. They won't even drag me upstairs. So just let me rot here. Literally what I was doing anyway. So, the thing that most important that I laid there and I was saying, there's one thing that does bother me a little bit. And that was these sons of bitches are so mean and fanatical. They're so barbaric with some of the stuff you've been seeing, especially with their own people, that they could do whatever they want, me. I don't care. But, after I'm dead and gone, well, the only thing I really cared about that would be left on this earth was the legacy of what they would say about me. You know, yes, he was a Marine. Yes, he was a commando. Call it what you want, but treat me like I was what I came over here to be and what I represented my country in. Don't say that I was a criminal. Don't say that I raped babies. Don't say, don't treat me like that. Like they did the pilots in Vietnam. Those pilots went down. They were trained to be like from World War II in Korea, you know, veterans that went on a military mission against other veterans and other military missions. That was a war thing. And as much as you don't want to admit that there's protocols in war and rules of engagement and whatever that means, okay, then fine, so be it. But here's what you got. You're not prepared to be treated as a criminal, okay? I didn't go over there to kill people per se. I wasn't there to rape women or eat babies and all the shit they're saying. They could drag me, shoot me, and they're going to drag me through the streets like they have in several other different types of scenarios and other places around the world. Be barbaric. I don't care what you do with my body, okay? But do not lie about things that was going to either degrade me and what I did and lied about. My family has to live through that and carry the Kraus name and be ashamed that you dropped the traditions and the battle hard honor of the Marine Corps. Wasn't a coward. I wasn't a pussy. I stood up there and fought it out. Or my country, that we were there, destroying people and being as rough and as barbaric as these people are used to or expected us to be. We were kind. We gave in. We bought a lot of things for that country. We supported them all over. There's no reason that they would have to embarrass the United States and say, "Oh, come up with the sergeant from the Marine Corps and look what he did." And this is why the CIA from the America sends these people over here to do this. They could come up with all kinds of lies and bullshit, and I could not defend it. Nobody could. The only saving grace is that at that time we didn't know that there could be the internet, and we have a conversation just like this that would blast over the world. They'd be able to say a few things, and it'd get buried in the newspapers. Newspapers go away, and nobody would even know where I was buried. Nowadays, if we had the technology back then we have today, Kel, you'd have been in there making a movie out of the trial, the murder trial. It'd have been something else. You'd be able to watch it firsthand. So that's all I really wanted, is to tell them, don't let them lie about me. Do whatever they want afterwards. I don't care. Send a body home. I just said he was a Marine. He did the best he could. He come in, he comes back in a box, like so many thousands of other ones have. And that's the only thing that really bothered me, is that. And then they came for me.
Yeah, tell me about that. I mean, you describe it in the book as like one of the last minutes. I mean, you had
these four goons came down, and for the first time, they had batons or big long nightsticks, and I said, "What?" I guess they thought I was going to fight them because they're taking me up to get executed. I said, "It is time, Marine." He says, "It's time for your death." And they had to help me up. I mean, I couldn't even stand up straight. Okay, I'm all bent over. My wounds now, it's been the same patches that they put on a week ago, where I didn't even know how long it was. 10 days, God knows. And why these guys thought I was there, I couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. Okay, but in their mind, maybe that's their protocol. They don't look like the kind of people that have, strong standards, operating procedures. They look like they just come down here and grab you by whatever appendage and drag your ass out there, which is what basically they did. But the first time I said, "What do you need these clubs for? I mean, what am I going to do with this? This is crazy." So if that's their parade, that's fine. If they wanted to make a, spectacle of it, so be it, whatever. So they're dragging me up the steps, and it's weird because it's kind of we're back to those mixed blessings now that could be a what? Conceived as a miracle. Somebody pointed it out to me that I couldn't hardly even walk. You can see now to this day where I got a pin in the toe that keeps it straight. that it was oh, your toes look like this. Well, mine mine look like that. Anyway, so hardly able to hobble to walk. It took me so long. It took them so it frustrated them so much to try to hobble me up the steps and lift and lift. It was almost like I was laughing at them because they have to help me like I was 90 years old or something. And that actually bought me time for when they brought me up to a different hallway than they never brought me before. And I knew it's like, okay, I never been this way before. I've been up to these steps, but never been down to the right down the hallway. And they're dragging me down the hallway, and I'm limping, and there's blood coming out, and I'm just saying, I wonder if I'm going to bleed to death, or when they're going to get me up to where they're going to shoot me. And and I can see at the end of this hall, they open up these steel doors, and the wind, the rush of the cold air, freezing cold. And oh my God, it was a mixed blessing there because it smelled so good. It's just it was nothing about what that sewer that I was in down below, and that stagnant, nasty blood and urine and everything. The oh my God, and people dying down there. Jesus God. Anyway, so and then you can almost see the light. There's one more stairwell, gray stairs. They look like the kind you would find on a battleship or something. They look very, very commercialized, and they weren't regular steps. And I said, "Oh man, I cannot make it." Literally, it's the first time in since you've ever heard the word "can't" from me in my life. And I can't. I mean, like, literally, I can't. My sacrum coccyx bone cracked. I said my guts are hanging out. I mean, I've been beat, shot, stabbed, and I ain't got it. I don't have the energy. Just shoot me right here. I mean, what the anyway, so as I'm trying to hold on to the rail and they're lifting my feet and putting next to one on top of the other, keeps falling down and slipping. Well, this number two guy comes running down the hallway, screaming and yelling in Farsi, and at these guys. And they're screaming at it, they back them off. They let go of me. I fall down the only two steps that I've gotten up so far that way. And I'm looking up at the door because I can see the bottom of the crack of the door. You can see daylight. And you're near the roof and you say, daylight. First time I'm going to see sunlight and then I'm going to get shot. So he's they're pushing each other back and forth and screaming. And next thing you know is that these guys grab me and they got arm under each one of me and they put me almost in a lock hold. I go, what? Again, what's with all the extra power and they're pissed off is what it is. They don't have to control me. All they could grab me right by the nose and then I'd have been drugged down the hallway. Well, they're dragging me down the hallway and they're barking back and forth at each other. And I mean, they're not getting along. I think, and thank God none of them were armed except for those little nightsticks they had because I think they would have shot each other. They were really pissed at each other. I don't know. Anyway, so I went back down that hallway and instead of going down below 3 or 4 levels underground to where cell number 5 was. I started going upstairs, and we went through a couple doors. And for the first time in I don't know, it had been 8 days, but I didn't know how long it was. I actually seen administrative area, and it was places that had nothing to do. It was almost like you took me completely out of that building and put me in another, admin building. We walk out, and I said, "Look, it's tiled floors, electric lights, and the lights were so bright it hurt your eyes." And I walked, and they were holding me, walking me down a hallway, and pushing me more or less, and pushing, pulling. And I crossed by an office that had a window, and I said, "Oh man, look at that! Shit, snow on the ground. A real window is daytime. Holy shit!" And I'm trying to look around for calendars and see if I can see a date or a time because I know what day I got attacked on there. Valentine's Day, February 14th. Imagine that. And if you don't think the St. Valentine's Day massacre didn't, come across my mind, you read the books and then you'll see where we were even talking about it with Jack and Stanley Henry. Anyway, so I'm looking and they parked me in this little room and sit me in a chair, and it's a regular office like what you're sitting at right there, and say there's a coffee mug and there's a pen and and a telephone, and I go, hell, shit, and they sat me there, and I don't know how long I sat there until these two guys in suits come in, and I've already had an interview with those guys in suits. You read about that, and I just said, "Oh my God, I don't want to go through this again. Stop with this bullshit, will you?" It's just mental torture where they come in and they would, give you more hope, and then they're going to take me right back out there and shoot me again. I mean, is there any more torture you can mentally, drive somebody with? So what happens is that they identify themselves as being from the International Red Cross. I said, "Yeah, right," and I'm Santa Claus. And they show me credentials. I say, "Yeah, credentials." I see we work in an area where people live by fake IDs. I'm taught and trained how to spot them. Anyway, we're looking at where they. He says no. He says and they knew my name, and they spoke different. They had a different accent. One was either German or Swiss, and the other one was slightly French. And I said, okay, man, if you're going to go out of your way to, pull this charade off, I'm impressed. And I just really couldn't even sit up anymore. Well, I mean, I just fallen over, and I said, whatever you're going to do, just friggin' do it, will you? And the guy says he turns around and he talked to one of the guys that were there, the administrative. He wasn't a mullah, but he was dressed almost like one, and I guess he was a go-between between him and that number 2 guy. And they had a little conversation, and next thing you know is that they left the room, and I just sat there. I'm looking out the door, kind of like I'm looking over your shoulder, and 40, 50 feet, I'm just looking, and I see people mulling around and moving, and I see this guy in a big, tall American, taller than the rest of them, and obviously dressed, like an Englishman or an American, big London fog coat, nice hat, gloves. And he turns and he starts walking, towards my general area, because there's a couple offices there. I don't know if he's coming or whatever. As he gets closer and he gets closer, I start looking at him, and am I dead? And they shot me? Am I hallucinating? What the hell is this? And I'm looking at him. I said, I know this guy. I recognize this guy. He gets closer, and as his eyes open up, and he just as he points to me, I said, Jack Schellenberger. And he goes, Ken. And we look at each other, and I go to sit. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought it's a hologram. And I went to stand up and get out of my chair, and I couldn't. I collapsed. And as I collapsed, he catches me, and he falls on the ground with me. And I says, it's me, Ken, Jack Schellenberger from the.
You've hit mute on your thing. You've hit mute.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
And I said, Jack, is it really you? And he says, it's me, Ken, it's me. I said, and when I had to try to reread this book, I had to go back, write this book, and I had to go back. I said, I remember that hugging him and asking him, how in hell do I know you're real? I mean, I think I'm dead, and this is like a dream. And all I just remember is that, let me smell you. I need to smell. And I smelled his cologne. And for some reason, that wiped everything out. And I said, no. And I could hold him, and I could realize, oh, my God, it's really you. He goes, it's me, Jack. He says, me, Ken. He said, we come to take you home. Home? He says, take you back to the embassy. I said, the embassy? I told him, it's been taken. Everybody's gone. And now I'm scared again. Is that this is a dream? Some kind of demon is coming to my, in my death. And he said, no. He says, no, the embassy's fine. You're going home, Ken, all the way home. To this day, every time I tell that part of the story, I collapse in his arms, completely, utterly exhausted. And I didn't even have tears. I didn't have any tears left in me at that point. He said something to the Red Cross folks, and they had already had some general clothes for me to come in and put on some shoes. And that's where I said, hey, the shoes don't fit. And I said, I'm glad they're extra large or extra big, because it gives space for that toe that didn't want to agree, with the way it's supposed to be. And they dressed me up, and they had some words, and they signed some papers, and they helped me out to a little car. And I remember the doors opening, and that bright sunlight it actually hurt the eyes. It felt like stinging in the eyes. The pain was the ultraviolet pain felt like somebody was pouring salt in my eyeballs. It's not just like when you wake up in the morning and can't squint. I mean, it was agonizing. And we get in this little car, and I got somebody from the embassy on one side and Jack's on the other side, and 2 guys up front, a driver and a bodyguard, I think. But I just remember trying to squint as hard as I could and take a look, that one last picture of Evin Prison, and say, nobody's ever going to believe, even if I wrote the book, if I had pictures, no one's ever going to believe what the hell went on down there. The butchering, the savagery, the inhumanity of what goes on down there. That's the Nazi Gestapo The SS didn't have anything on these bastards. I'm telling you that. You read the book, you'll see it. And we went back to the embassy there and drove back, and I had to keep my eyes shielded and closed, and I was trying to ask questions and from Jack about what happened and who and I said, he said, don't worry. He says, look, we're going to go back. We're going to get you cleaned up. The doc's going to take a look at you. I said, the ambassador and some of the staff wants to talk to you. I said, well, I want to talk to them too. I got a bone to pick with them. And we went back to the embassy, and from the book there is that later on that night after I got cleaned up, the doctor looked at me and fixed what he could, had some kind of antibiotics or whatever he gave me, and couldn't eat anything solid. I mean, I still remember the meal that was there. It was Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes. It tasted good, but my stomach was so rattled, and I hadn't eaten that much, dysentery and everything. I really couldn't even get my get the food down. And you're looking at minutes away, minutes of being executed, 10 more steps, and then being yanked out of that, and then come down here 10 minutes later, you're going to go home and you're going to be free again. It's not real. It's like someone's taking you off this planet and put you in the matrix, and you're in another world that you can't. I don't know how to explain it to people. It took me about a year later. I thought, man, it's still a dream. It can't happen. Is it a miracle? It's beyond a miracle. Beyond a miracle. How did they find me? How did I know where I was? How did they get me in time? They could have been 10, 15 minutes later. They'd have stopped for coffee or something. They'd have been picking up my dead carcass. So from there, that night we stayed at the ambassador. We had a couple of questions answered and some things that were answered. And they said, you're under a fatwa, ordered by a religious mullah, to be executed for murder. And it's they got to get you out of the country like now. They didn't know what they were going to do with you. They didn't want to actually execute you like they said they were going to. They were going to, but they had second thoughts about it, because once the American knew where you were and your picture went around the world, Ken, he says, if they'd executed you, Carter would have been in a bad position. And he would have had to respond. And he says that would have been, a nightmare nobody wanted. So with a lot of pressure from what I learned later in declassified debriefings, Khomeini had been kicked out of the country in exile and went to Algeria, Egypt, and a couple other countries. But he eventually ended up in France, and it was the French government that actually went to bat for me, and went in through the United States and told Khomeini that it's not a good idea to execute that guy right now. He says he's a #1 pawn in the world, and it would be, they would use that as a pretext to come in here and kick the shit out of all of you. And you don't need that right now. You can't afford a secondary, front of the Western NATO allies against you. And besides that, Saddam Hussein right across the river there in Iraq, they didn't like each other anyway. So here he knew he's got to start dealing with him, in the next years to come. So whatever decision it was made, it pressured him. It would look better if you just turn this wounded American that you saved from the hospital and bandaged him up and found him right before he got executed with these bastards in the prison, and you saved him, and they save face by turning me over to International Red Cross. They didn't turn me back. They did not turn me back over to Americans. The Red Cross turned me back over to Americans, so it makes them look like a feather in their hat. What a bunch of political bullshit, but that's I'm glad it happened that way. Yeah. So with that, the next day is I'm woke up dark 30 in the morning. I didn't sleep at all at night. You've seen the book where I was so scared that I slept in the closet, because they had disarmed all the Marines, and they know that I was under a fatwa that wherever I go, that they don't have to take it out on me. Just boom, I can be executed anywhere, anytime for whatever. Kind of scary. And you're right. Yeah, you start looking over your shoulder a little bit when in some places and some crowds. But anyway, so they got me to the airport the next day, and that's that big picture that you'll see where I've got the civilian clothes on, and you got the guy with the Uzi and the guy with the the grunt, I called him, and he's got the Uzi, and the other guy's got the GT rifle, and there's one on each side of me, and they're walking me through, and there's a big picture of me flashed at the Merabat airport, and it's got in Farsi and in English, it's got I'm being kicked out of the country and never to come back. I was deported. And they said, you ever come back to Iran again, you'll be executed on the spot. I told the son of a bitch, I ever come back to Iran, it's going to be in a B-52, mother.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I love that. I love that. So let's fast forward, if you don't mind. I want to just really get to two more things, if you don't mind. We've been doing this for 2 hours. Thank you so much for spending time with me, Ken. I'm telling you, you are an American treasure. You are a treasure, and I'm so proud to know you. You are definitely one of the heroes that I know. Explain to me what it was like to grab your mom in that iconic photograph, where you're lifting her off the ground.
Yeah.
You've been shot, you've been tortured, you've been beaten like crazy, and there you are giving your mom a big hug. What was like that? What was like?
Well, we were on a C-1. I flew out of Iran, and we went to Wiesbaden, Germany. I thought it was Frankfurt, but they tell me it was Wiesbaden. I said, okay, I don't remember. It's 40-something years ago. And then they got me cleaned up, and doctors looked at me again. They stitched me up in places and pieced together a uniform for me. And then I had a big, long debrief on a C-141 all the way over from Germany to the United States. When we first started getting American airspace, this colonel got hold of me and gave me a debrief on what was going to happen. And I said, well, what's going to happen anywhere? I didn't know. I had no idea when I was down there for 8 days what had happened. I hadn't talked to anybody. I didn't know what happened to me. Didn't know what happened to them. No one has told me since, even when I went back to the embassy. It's quiet. You'll be told when you need to be told what you will be told. Heard that before, right? So he gives me a debrief on the plane. He says, might not be ready for this there, Sarge, but he says, when you get to Andrews Air Force Base, he says, there's going to be an entourage like you ain't going to believe. He said the president was going to be there, but he had the last minute thing along with the vice president, and they're just not going to be there. He says, Graham Claytor, Secretary of Navy. I said, Secretary of State. I said, your hometown senator, Senator Hines, William Hines from Pittsburgh. He says the entire Marine Guard band, 8th and I. He says it's going to be the news. It's going to be big. I said, over what? I'm just glad to get home. And he says, no, he says, you didn't realize what had happened. And they gave me the story and told me what happened. And he says, how close it come to them. They had the 82nd Airborne on alert. They had, they were going to divert all kinds of military resources, because once they come in to try to get me or get what was left of me if I was executed, they were going to use a pretext to make sure none of it happened to the other Americans, Marines, or anything like that. And of course, they walk in and they don't bring enough guys. Next thing you know, you got Operation Eagle Claw, Desert One, and you got a fiasco and a half. So how do you keep escalating this shit? You know what I mean? And I said, oh yeah, I could see how that gets out of hand real quick. Again, 1979. We're not real good at doing this, even though we're just barely over Vietnam era. And I said, okay, fine. What's up? And he said, oh, you're going to be given, Purple Heart and a Navy Combination Medal, Cross of Valor, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I asked him, I said, Colonel, I said, when anybody in the military does something commendable that deserves a medal or a citation or something, usually that goes before a committee that looks at the qualifications and the elements to see. And it takes weeks. I mean, sometimes years to get these when you have to, find all the information out. I said, you sons of bitches didn't know squat about where I was, who I was, or who had me. And now all of a sudden, I'm on this plane. I'm going to open the door, meet everybody, his brother and his dog with kind of banners, and you're going to pin medals on me, and I don't even know what they're for. In less than 24 hours ago, I was going to be executed. You couldn't even find my ass. And now you're going to be hanging medals on me. What's the story? And he's saying, Sergeant, this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, and you're going to do it. You're not going to ask questions. I said, this is a political year, son. I said, you've worked in the embassy enough. You've been around. You got friends and family. I know you're, connected to the Hines, senator's family. I said, your dad and whatever's been a veteran. we know your background. He says, President Carter needs to look good, and America needs a hero. I said, the only people that are, the only thing I'm a hero to is the 22 people that were in that caravanserai. Those 15 Americans and the other Foreign Service local employees and the 2 Marines that I have, my buddies, and they're the only ones. I said, I traded my life for theirs, and I damn near screwed that up. And I said, one of my best friends that was there, Menachem, he's dead. I can never repay him. I said, I'm not a hero. I just did what I was supposed to do under circumstances I didn't even know how knew that could exist. Now you got to pin the tail on the donkey here. He said, Marine, one more time. He said, when we land and we taxi, he says, he says, I was at that time had only half my uniform on because I was laying down sleeping and all that. He says, we're going to fix you all up. He says, you're going to stand at that door. He said, when the engines kick off, he says, everything, they're going to have a stairwell, red carpet, and the band. He says, that door is going to open. You're going to stand there, let them take a bunch of pictures of you. And then I'm going to give you the command forward march to the Marine Corps hymn. You're going to go down those steps. Hopefully you don't fall and break your neck. We laughed and joked about that because my toe. I mean, I couldn't even. It's funny because I had one shoe that was larger than the other to keep that toe that was straight, and they had they couldn't pin it. I had to duct tape the toe till they get to the hospital, and then tell me that's try walking with a broke toe like that. It's a bitch, man. And then you're walking down the steps. Oh my God. And he says, your mom's going to be there with your sisters. And he says, don't be surprised if your mom runs up to you and you just grab her and give her a hug. I said, Colonel, I don't think I can hug a teddy bear right now. I said, my stomach, my wounds, I said, they barely got stitches in them now that's holding them back together again. I don't know if I can do it. He goes, suck it up, Marine. He goes, there's going to be 1 million people watching you on television and thousands of cameras. He said, make us proud. Now you're asking me to do some more bullshit here, man. This guy, it just never stops. It just never stops. And so it's one of those, I sir got it. And that iconic thing is that they played the Marine hymn, and down I went, and they had to remove the red carpet. There was red carpet all the way downstairs, but it was raining that day, so they said no, it's a dangerous slipping and falling. I said, yeah, look at me, come all the way home here, survive all that, and then fall down the steps and break my neck. That's my kind of luck right there. I said, okay, now we know when you're now we know when the end of your compromises and the circumstances are now no longer miracles. That's the end of the miracles right there. Your wings don't fly. So we left and joke about that. But he said, yeah, I grabbed my mom, and all I did was hug her. And when you take a look, you can see I'm lifting straight up and just leaning back. I really didn't lift her off the ground. I'm leaning back a little bit. So it gives the impression, because I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the strength to lift my mom. She's not even 100 pounds. I lifted my own ass up out of there barely. So then,
it's a beautiful photograph. It's a beautiful.
Yeah, it went around the world. I mean, I got about 30 different newspaper articles of the same picture. That one and the one where I'm in the in a hospital bed, of course, over in Tehran, and those things went around the world, and we saw it, and it was just amazing. And you get in line with all the dignitaries, and you get the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Secretary of Navy, Secretary of State, and on and on and on and on. And on. I can't even remember how many people. There's more generals, more colonels, more assistant everybody's. It wore me out. I said, but you know what? I'm not trying to be condescending or anything, but I was just so damn tired. I couldn't even remember. And it got to a point where I even told the colonel, he says, I can't get to a point where I can't salute anymore, because where they had cracked my rib, I can't even get my head up. So rather than, give a half-ass shitty salute that they'd have pictures of, they said, okay, you get the point down here, past this guy, we're not going to make you required, to salute. Because I was the lowest rank out there. I was saluting every friggin' money. And, so we had a few words here and there, and thank you home, God bless America, et cetera, et cetera. And we got on the Learjet that owned by Senator Hines, the ketchup people. And we all got on there, and I was exhausted, man. I couldn't thank him enough. And my mom said later that you ever fall asleep in the middle of a conversation talking to somebody? He goes, you passed completely out. And they flew me back to the Naval Air Station, Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, because we lived outside Philly at the time. And so we landed there, more entourage, more pictures, more hello, welcome home, hero kind of stuff. And it's great. and I loved it. I mean, it's just overwhelming. But to tell somebody just that one time is enough to well them up. Keep telling them again and again and again. I mean, my God, it's just, it blows you up to a point where, you start to believe your own bullshit. You do. You start to believe like, well, maybe I am a hero to some people. But he said, and if these people here in America want to look good at it and want to feel good about what I did to save them, then, so be it. I will neglect that for them. I won't keep them from that. I'll let them have a little piece of honor, little piece of fun at the time. And I mean, we drove onto our street in Pennsylvania, in our hometown. The streets were lined with people, and it's cold. It's February, and it's nasty, shitty weather. And the kids were out there. Local kids were saying, "Welcome home, Sergeant Ken, home Kenny Kraus." The VFW, American Legion, the high school band. It was amazing. I mean, you think, I was Neil Armstrong and I stepped on the moon or something. It was bizarre. And the one thing I wish I could do, when people say, regrets or remorse or anything, no, it's just, I wish I would have been able to find out who that guy was that took the picture that saved my life, that went around the world. And I wish I could ever see those, ever see again the people that I was responsible for saving, at the caravanserai. You'll never know who those Foreign Service local employees people are. They never going to acknowledge the secret squirrels were even there. Hello. But for what it's worth, I still have a couple letters and some postcards, Christmas cards and things that came years later. They would just write Ken Kraus, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. That's it. No street, no number or nothing. I get cards or something like that. And I was out of the Marine Corps and they forward them to me. And I get them and they said, "You don't know me, but I'm so-and-so, and I got married and I had kids," and they're like that. You were guys that saved my grandmom. You saved my dad or something like that. And I look at this stuff and I have them in a shoe. They were sent to my mom. My mom's got them in a shoebox. And when she passed away, my sisters gave them to me. And I said, I never knew this. I never knew those people would send cards and letters and call my mom or something like that, say thank you. And I said, we'll never meet him. We don't know him. But if it wasn't for him, we would have a family today. And I said, oh, shit, man. Now that makes it worth it. That is what, when you have the good memories and you have the nightmare demons with post-traumatic stress, and when you want to think and feel good about yourself, and that's one of the good thoughts that were there, not the demons and the hell and the nightmares that were in humanity over there that still happen today. I mean, look, you go on the internet and see what they're doing to their own people over there, murder and genocide per se. Now think what kind of hate they would have for me after I've been over there shooting at them all day. Yeah. So, and then it gets out that people ask you, what are you going to do after that when you get out of the Marine Corps? I mean, and then I said, well, I kind of thought I got robbed with being a servant. I'm servant oriented. If you knew the history and got the special edition, you'll know about my dad and his brothers, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. They served through all of them. And this is a service type oriented thing in our family. And it's so when they weren't going to, wasn't going to re-enlist in the Marine Corps, they weren't going to send me back out again on embassy duty. I did my 8 years active and my 4 reserve. And with that, I picked up a badge and a gun and became a law enforcement officer on the street. So, they won't send me overseas to help save lives or, and enforce rules and regulations to keep people safe. Well, I'll do it on my own street, in my own backyard here. And I spent 20 more years here in Georgia. Then I retired in 2015.
Thank you so much for your service, both to our country and your local community as a police officer and as a Marine. Semper Fi, I am so proud of knowing you and hearing your story. It has been absolutely amazing. What I would like to close this out with, if you could think about it, is, can you help me understand the good news story about listening to your spirit? Can you help me understand how that may be something that you could point people to, that in your most trying times in your book, you describe time and time again how you took a pause and looked to something greater than yourself? and how that affected you. Can you say something to that as you close us out?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and it's often visited my head and my soul and my spirit, because when you get a guide like that, or you get a door open like that, to me, and this is just my belief and my experience, okay, the other side of the world, the dark side of the world, the demonic side of the world, the people either don't believe in, or they believe in from a Hollywood point of view. And trust me, it's nowhere near that. Okay. The devil is not a funny little man in the red suit with pitchforks. Okay. I'll go search it for yourself, but it's taken me 55 years to figure it out. And when you come down to a point where you want an answer, you want the questions given to you that you should ask. So you say, what should I do now? You know, where am I going? And that's exactly what was going on in Iran over there from the very beginning when we first got there, all the way to the assault, and all the way through the terrifying week and being captured. You sometimes don't even know what to ask. You know you're scared. You know you're terrified. You know this is wrong, but you don't even really know what to ask for. You feel like you're selfish. And I said, no. I said, my belief in my Christianity, I said, the only thing this is going to boil down to, I don't know if it's God's will or not. He's a little busy at the moment. I said, I already had my experience with accepting Jesus Christ as my Savior, and the blood and the salvation. I'm not worried about and concerned about my soul, being saved and going on to another world. Okay. But it's trying to get there and understand it. I have to get through that door. I have to understand that door. There's somebody on the side of that door knocking, but I don't know how to ask who's there. And the only thing that really will bring you to that point is when you're absolutely down and out, could be terrified, could absolutely be alone. If you want to look at scripture and you want to look from the Christian point of view, what happened after Jesus was as a man and then became baptized with the Holy Spirit, and then what, 40 days and 40 nights to go out and be tempted by the demon himself? Nobody I know in life's history has ever had that. And thank God, I wouldn't want to face that either. But facing it there is a complete aloneness. But I don't look at it as aloneness. I said it's solitude. Yes, I'm alone. Nobody knows where I'm at. Nobody cares. I'm going to die here, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, they're all givens. Okay. You can't change it. Get with it. I said, what the best can you make of this? And I said, well, this Jesus part ain't going to work because, you already done worked his cross, and you've accepted his blood. So what do you do? Just go and wait to die here and then he'll come get your soul? I said, no, there's something more here that you never really give a lot of a notion to, or you don't give a lot of attention to. And that's the Holy Spirit of God. And he will talk to you. If you will listen, you have to be quiet and listen. And I just don't mean, you know, quiet from the sound point of view and the frequency. You can hear it, well, no matter where you're at, underwater. You can hear it in an airplane, because I've heard it both places. Is that when you got to the point where I knew I was not going to get out of there alive, and you know what? I didn't really care. I didn't. You just get so desperate, and then you even lose the desperate. Your hope is gone. Nothing's going to save you there. It's absolutely impossible. Now, I could imagine back in the Old Testament, Moses being driven into the desert to a point where, he's almost on his last breath. And God had worked him to where he was completely open and had nothing but the availability to have all of God's blessings, and that he could hear God, he could see God. And only Moses back then, if you want to listen, read it, that's only where it's going to be, is when you get that far down and out. And then I said, I got nowhere else to go. I said, okay, I will now have to listen, because I got no choice. I had no choice, but I did have a choice, that I wanted it. That's what it really meant, Will, is that I wanted it. I wanted it more than anything, more than my life, more than anything. I wanted to have that connection with God that I didn't have in Catholic school, or because of what they said in, on religious Sunday school teachings, or what even people had said in movies or anything like that. I wanted a one-to-one right before I die, understanding of what it's really like for a human soul before they lose the attachment here to the earth as a human. Who is Kenny Kraus? Who am I? What am I? I have another name somewhere, I'm sure. We're not known by who we are here. Okay. So if I'm about to get there, can I please have a calling card? And the calling card is the Holy Spirit. Since then, I've always been able to, when I wanted to pay attention, sit down, get quiet, go places, in and around, fill myself with the atmosphere. Sometimes it's near the ocean, sometimes it's up in the mountains, or sometimes it's just, quiet and you want to be alone. Don't think that you are alone. That's solitude. That's a great opportunity to get quiet and ask yourself inside the questions you want to be answered. And don't fear, because it's going to be the truth. And you follow that truth. Afterwards, you might have to make some changes in your life. You might have to face some realities, but that's a trade-off. Did you really want them? You didn't know if you really wanted that or wanted to change anyway. But if you're willing to make those changes, if you're willing to barter like I did my life at that time for whatever it was, and I didn't realize how deep I was getting into this shit right there, that I had made that deal. Whatever it takes, Lord, take me. I started this fight. I said, I'm responsible. I said, I didn't think I was going to get out of there anyway. So in that restaurant, when I made that deal with him, he goes, it's a good deal. And we signed that contract. And I didn't even know it until a few minutes later when I had that shotgun pointed at that guy's head. And I had to realize this was a miracle that you can't even think of. You can't conceive of this. It's already done and gone. Who could have possibly have thought that was the way out? That was your key. I certainly didn't. Or I'd have been looking for that guy a lot earlier. I'd look a way to barter out of there. So to me, it's not just the plan of salvation in Christianity and reading my Bible, but when I read it, set the time aside and say directly, demand it almost now, get impertinent. Holy Spirit, whatever you're doing, I want to talk to you and I want you to talk to me. Any way, shape, or form, and I will listen. Believe it or not, I will shut up and I will listen. I'll open my mind and my heart, my eyes. I'll look for signs. I'll look for signals. And when I'm done talking to you, the praying's not over, because maybe it's just talking isn't the way it's supposed to be, but watching for signals, watching for signs, watching for answers to those questions that you didn't even know how to ask. I don't know how else to put it to you, but that's, the way I've had it forced to be lived, because I want it to be deep down in my heart. And even after the Marine Corps, some of the things that have happened to me along my life as a police officer have absolutely convinced me. And I live that in my heart, my mind, and that's the way I treat people. And I don't preach to anybody, because this is me, and this might not fit anybody else in the world. If anybody wants to sit down and talk about it, I I have no qualms whatsoever about telling you how I think, how I feel. This is one of the few times I've ever gotten spiritual or opened up on this side of the fence on a podcast. I allude to it when I tell you about everything that when I put all my notes together of going through this experience just in Iran. Is it coincidence? Or when I say no, I'm convinced they were miracles. And you just got to read the book, or now it's made into a script and we're looking for a producer to maybe want to make this a good movie. And it's a signs of the end times, in my opinion, great market time for it. And since we're getting ready to go back to toe-to-toe punching those idiots in the head again over there in Iran, looks like it's going to be more trouble than what it's worth. But still, we can't allow them to get hold of nuclear material when they're so radical, because we know the first place that they're going to drop a bomb, and then the worst case of revelation is going to be upon us. So that's where we'll leave that for another day and another talk.
So this is the Book of Miracles. It really is. When I saw it there, that page 222, miracles, believe in them, that spoke to me. This was I opened this to this part just an hour before this podcast started, and I definitely believe you're touched and you're blessed, and I'm so proud to know you. I salute you, Ken Kraus, Sergeant. You devil dog, Semper Fi. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It really, really means a lot to me. I'll get your coin, and we're going to get a serial number on it, and we're going to get this is the box, and this is a coin.
Awesome.
We'll have a serial number on it, and then we'll put this podcast on this thumb drive that's titanium. So if the tank runs over it, it'll survive. And you can maybe put this somewhere that you'll like. So we'll put this package together. We'll get it to you before too long. And I really appreciate you spending time with me. You are a true hero, a true amazing American. And there's nobody that could say that they did and they stood their post like you can. You did a great job, Marine. Thank you so much. I salute you.
Thank you, Will. Just let me put a shout out to Rich Nabel, who put this together. He's a former law enforcement officer. We had the honor and the pleasure of conducting a couple cases together. He was in a different department, but is overall, when we ever needed each other, we were always there at midnight. And thank you, Rich. I appreciate it very much, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Don't go anywhere, Ken.
Nope.
Marshall in the middle.